of the thick cloud and because of the outbreaks of rain and drizzle, which likely to pep up a little bit through the afternoon. So quite dull and dank along the M4. Some of that wet weather will turn to snow across parts of Wales for a time through the evening and overnight. Again, mostly over the hills. It's dry and fine further north, though, through this evening. Pretty quickly, though, with those clear skies in western Scotland, those temperatures will be back down below freezing. But the cloud increasing across eastern Scotland, thickening up all the while further south with further rain and drizzle moving in. As I said, overnight we could see some snow flurries through parts of Wales. Any snow, though, that's going to stick is really only over the hills. The moors could see a little in the southwest also, but mostly at low levels, just rain. Cold temperatures, though, just about staying above freezing with that blanket of cloud for England and Wales, but a frost certainly likely in western Scotland to start the weekend. But again, the Highlands, the Western Isles, that's the place to be for sunshine on Saturday. A cracking day to come here tomorrow. Some brightness elsewhere, particularly in the west, Northern Ireland, parts of southwest England, but for a good chunk of England, Wales, southern Scotland, another fairly dull day to come tomorrow with rain and drizzle at times, particularly over the Midlands and southern England. The wind's a little lighter, though, here tomorrow.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're giving you not one, but 2 chances to win this month with 2 prize bundles that include an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash. But that's not all. You'll also get a brand new iPhone 16 and a £500 shopping voucher to spend at your favourite store. So why not be extra lucky this month? For a chance to win an iPhone, vouchers and £10,000 in cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12 o'clock on Friday, the 7th of February. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Nana Acquia.
Now, crisis meetings for the Prime Minister and his cabinet in an extended and unusual summit at Lancaster House. This as the Reform Party tops 2 nationwide polls and the Bank of England halves its growth rate forecast.
Which is bad news for Chancellor Rachel Reeves, who has reportedly been put on notice following the bleak assessment from the bank, with stagnant growth and higher inflation recalling the grim economic days of the 1970s.
Elsewhere, a massive MRP seat-by-seat mega poll shows the Tories and Reform could win enough seats between them to hold a majority at the next election. But would Nigel Farage cut a deal with Kemi?
And Donald Trump has turned his fire towards the International Criminal Court, which last year issued a controversial arrest warrant for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Trump is set to swipe the international body with sweeping sanctions.
So much to discuss on the show today, but an overriding sense that we're at a crisis point economically. I mean, what on earth is happening to the government that said it was going for growth, that growth is its #1 mission, and yesterday we see the Bank of England slash growth and their forecasts by 50%.
Well, I think it was all very predictable with the policies that the government outlaid, and they were warned by different business groups, by employers, they were warned by the farmers, even those plans that they're looking to put in place. People have been telling Rachel the NI hike is just going to punish businesses, it's anti-growth. She even said it a few years ago in the House of Commons. I at a loss to understand why none of them listened, and now we are where we are.
And amidst it all, it looks like we could be giving between 9 and 18 billion pounds to Mauritius for no reason at all. And beyond that, we see this political uncertainty. And it always follows. When there's economic uncertainty, when there's economic pain, there's always political uncertainty that follows. And that's where we see this poll that puts, Reform, Labour and Tories all on a similar number of seats. At the next election, were an election held tomorrow, which could lead to a, you can imagine all the different coalition ideas that there would be in Parliament, or a minority government and more instability.
Well, you know what, I think that's quite slightly jumping the gun, because we've got at least 4 more years of this.
True.
And if it carries on as is, then I don't think that will be the issue. I think Labour will lose any form of support because they're not listening to anyone. And I think the Conservative Party, unless they come up with some new policies, or some policies at least, then I suspect that they don't seem to have a new voting base that will go for them. I think that it'll be reform. A much bigger swing towards reform.
Well, we'll be looking at all of this in detail, especially this new mega poll that does this seat-by-seat analysis, all to come on the show. That's after your news headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
Hi there, very good afternoon to you. It's just after midday. I'm Aaron Armstrong. The Cabinet have been holding an emergency meeting to discuss challenging economic forecasts and plummeting poll ratings. Downing Street says Sir Keir Starmer has chaired the meeting, a so-called secret meeting, in an effort to plan Labour's ambitions for change, investment, reform and growth, although it's a fresh plan to the Chancellor's plans to stimulate economic growth after the Bank of England halved its forecast for the year and hinted at a further drop in living standards. The bank cut interest rates to 4.5% in a bid to stimulate the economy, describing growth as weak and productivity tepid. It means household finances are likely to come under increasing pressure. Deputy Lib Dem leader Daisy Cooper says Rachel Reeves should rethink some of her policies.
The government is absolutely right to say that growth is its #1 priority, but the government's measures simply don't stack up. And the announcements just yesterday and the warnings that growth is going to be much lower than previously forecasted should be a real wake-up call for the Chancellor. We have said that she should cancel the jobs tax, which the government is planning to bring into effect in April. And we do think as well there's a very strong case for the government to renegotiate the botched Brexit deal that we have with the EU to try and get rid of the red tape that is holding back British businesses from doing all the trade that they could be doing right now.
Meanwhile, a new poll's predicted a 3-way tie at the next general election, with Labour cabinet ministers set to lose their seats and Nigel Farage holding the balance of power. The survey of almost 5,800 people by Megapoll found Reform UK would have 175 seats, up from only 5. Labour would drop from 412 to 174, with the Tories gaining about 50. Wes Streeting, Yvette Cooper and Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner would be among those to lose their seats, with the most likely outcome a Conservative Reform UK coalition if a general election was held tomorrow. A major railway line in Manchester is closed after a car driven by a suspected drunk driver crashed onto the tracks. Now, images from the scene show the vehicle had come to rest upside down. Plenty of debris there as well. These are the tracks in Salford. It's caused major disruption to train services between Manchester and Liverpool already, and that line is expected to be closed for much of the day. Celebrity chef Gino D'Acampo has denied allegations of inappropriate behaviour on the sets of his TV programmes.
Hannah, whose identity we're protecting, worked with Gino D'Acampo in 2011 on a photo shoot for a high-profile magazine. She told us she was shocked when he made a highly sexualised comment to her.
President Trump has signed an executive order imposing sanctions on the International Criminal Court. He's accused the ICC of illegitimate and baseless actions against the United States and Israel. Neither country recognises the court. The measure places financial and visa restrictions on individuals and their families who assist in ICC investigations of American citizens or its allies. Well, last November, the ICC issued an arrest warrant for Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, over alleged war crimes in Gaza, which Israel denies. It also issued a warrant for a Hamas commander who was reportedly killed by an Israeli airstrike in July. The King and Queen will join Hollywood star Stanley Tucci at a formal dinner later to celebrate Italian cuisine. It will also mark the confirmation of a state visit to Italy and the Vatican later this year. The major spring tour will take place in early April, and it coincides with Charles and Camilla's 20th wedding anniversary. They will meet Pope Francis at the Vatican and celebrate the Catholic Church's Pilgrims of Hope Jubilee year. And they'll also carry out engagements in Rome and the northeastern city of Ravenna, known for its early Christian mosaic artwork. And a cold snap's on the way. Temperatures may plummet to as low as -7 in parts of the UK over the coming days. A yellow cold weather warning will come into force across much of the country. The Met Office is warning of the coldest temperatures in Scotland. It could drop to -4 in the north of England and Wales, which could bring a couple of centimetres of snow. It means an increased use of healthcare services by vulnerable people and a greater risk to life. But a return of the dreaded beast from the east is unlikely. That's it for the moment. More from me a little later.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 8 minutes past midday. Now, is the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, on notice after her plans for growth have been dealt a major blow by a disastrous forecast from the Bank of England?
The Governor, Andrew Bailey, warns that Britain's bloated public sector is dragging down the economy.
I think it's fair to say that we have seen an increase in public sector employment. We haven't seen a commensurate increase in measured public sector output.
So, in plain English, that's many more people working in the public sector, paid for by our taxes, but not doing anything more.
Exactly.
No more public output.
But they should have thought about that before the inflation-busting pay rises for very little in return. But I can solve this in like literally a minute. You know, he's got the cabinet meeting. I've got it.
Yeah.
Stop the NI hike.
OK.
Scrap the VAT raid on private schools. Get rid of the notion of the inheritance tax of farmers and actually target the people who are flouting the system and stop the Chagos deal. And unfortunately, seeing as you've broken all of your election promises, just raise some income tax, raise income tax. Done. Less than a minute.
Ooh, that would be unpopular.
Well, everything is unpopular.
That's
everything
true.
they've done. They've broken the rules anyway.
Shall we speak to Christopher Snowdon now, the head of lifestyle economics at the Institute for Economic Affairs? Because, Christopher, this is a pretty big blow to the Chancellor from the Bank of England. Let's not forget, she used to work there.
No, indeed you did. Look, I mean, I don't know why anybody takes these projections from the Bank of England, the IMF, or anybody else seriously. We just seem to fall into this trap again and again and again. I happen to agree with them that growth is going to be a lot lower than they originally thought, but frankly, nobody has any idea what growth is going to be. Least of all, probably the Bank of England. And insofar as they are correct about this, I think they need to be shouldering some of the blame themselves. They've kept interest rates too high for too long, in my opinion, in the opinion of many economists. Last time we had inflation at the pretty trivial rate of about 2.5% as it is now, back in 2018, interest rates were 0.5%. Now they've just been dropped to 4.5%. I'm not seeing the logic there. I don't want to go back to 0.5% interest rates, by the way, but they have been too high and holding back growth. So, look, I'm not going to defend the government on this because they haven't, but they haven't had all that long to deal with it. I think the problem has been that for the first 6 months, Rachel Reeves in particular spent a lot too much time talking down the economy, putting up taxes. And that has discouraged growth. It's reduced business confidence. And of course, we're not going to have much growth this year. All you have to do is look around you to see that.
What do you think they should be doing then? Because so far, everything they've done appears to be the wrong thing. I listed what I think they should do, even though it's breaking their manifesto promise. But then they've broken their manifesto promise anyway.
Well, I do kind of agree with you, actually. I wouldn't put income tax there, but I'd be tempted to put national insurance back up on the employee rather than the employer. I think that would be much less economically damaging. And it would only take us back to where we were, 18 months ago, you know. We can't just go around saying we need to cut taxes, because we are at the absolute limit of what we can borrow. And I'm glad that everybody now agrees about that. So you're going to have to either cut spending or increase some other tax. I think you need to do a combination of that. I think you need to have quite big public spending cuts in some areas. One way of doing that, by the way, probably the best way for growth, would be to do something about benefits. Do something about sickness benefit in particular. It's obvious to anybody who looks at the figures that you have a huge number of people who are basically malingering and misusing the system. We've got a ridiculous number of people of working age who are on out-of-work sickness benefits, and that is due to the last government really messing up the system and creating perverse incentives. You deal with that, you save millions of pounds in expenditure, and you get people into work, paying taxes and being productive.
Yeah, it does seem completely extraordinary that actually people with a straight face argue that there are now millions of people who are more ill than they were just 4 years ago, and that the country is just so much less well that all these people have to be on benefits. I think that doesn't pass the sniff test. But Christopher, you're talking about the interest rates being perhaps too high. Isn't the issue here with this word stagflation? It's not just stagnant growth, it's also higher inflation. So is there a risk that if interest rates come down too quickly, inflation might well soar up again? I mean, inflation is far higher than target and higher than the Chancellor would like.
Well, it's slightly higher than target. It's 2.5%. You know, a couple of years ago, it was 11%. The Bank of England, again, take their projections with a pinch of salt. I would advise they're saying inflation is going to go up to 3.75%. They say in a couple of years it'll be back down to 2%, but they always say that. They have to say that because that's their job, is to make sure that inflation is 2%, right? So they will always predict inflation is going to be 2% in a couple of years. I really see no reason to expect inflation nudging up towards 4%. They say it's down to energy prices. Well, maybe energy prices will go up. That doesn't mean the price of everything else has to go up. The Bank of England just doesn't accept basic monetary policy. That's the problem. It doesn't accept the quantity theory of money. So long as we are not printing a lot of money this year, we can easily afford to have interest rates come down. And we're not printing money. In fact, we are doing quantitative tightening. So I don't think we need to worry about inflation. Now, we'll come back on the show in a year's time if I'm wrong, but I don't think we need to be worrying about that. And I think interest rates of around about 4% will put a lot of money into most people's pockets.
Christopher Snowdon, it is brilliant to have an economist on the show who will actually stand by their predictions. We'll have to have you back in 365 days' time.
He might refuse.
And hold you to this interview.
If he's totally wrong, he might refuse. That's the only thing.
Well, Dr. Christopher Snowdon, thanks so much for joining us, Head of Lifestyle Economics at the IEA.
I think I'd also cut the civil service as well, because that's just bloated, isn't it? That's doubled the size since the pandemic.
It's huge. Hundreds of thousands more civil servants. What are they doing?
Nothing. DEI. But listen, celebrity chef Gino D'Acampo has been accused of sexually inappropriate behaviour following an ITV News investigation. Well, joining us now for the latest on this is the journalist Sarah Louise Robertson. Sarah, what can you tell us about the allegations? I know some of them you cannot say on TV, but what can you tell us about the allegations and where are we with this?
Well, these are historic allegations, Nana, that have come out. And what's interesting is it's actually ITV News that have looked into this. Now, Gino D'Acampo has made his fame from being an ITV presenter. We saw him as a chef on This Morning. He was on Celebrity Juice. He also has a very popular show with Fred and Gordon. I think it's Fred and Gino and Gordon Go Fishing or something like that. So he's sort of seen as one of the ITV talents, or was seen as one of the ITV talents. So it's extraordinary that it's ITV News that have actually sort of blown the lid off this. These allegations first came to light last year. They were reported on in the papers last year. And then it sort of seemed to sort of die down. And then it's all come back up, obviously, with ITV News doing this investigation. They've spoken to several of the female women who basically have brought these allegations and said that they felt Gino behaved inappropriately towards them, and also I think the words were used was in terms aggressively towards them, in terms of using his power, say, because these people who were working on his shows may have been runners or producers and weren't at high enough level. They felt like there was a disparity in the power between Gino, who was the talent, and them, the employees. So they felt what was coming out, that he was using his status and his powerful status at ITV, as a star of ITV, in order to do and say what he liked. And some of this was sexually inappropriately suggestive comments, lewd comments, and lewd actions that made these women feel uncomfortable in the workplace.
Sarah, is it just comments? I mean, everyone obviously has a different bar for what they think is acceptable or inappropriate behaviour. Is this report suggesting that there was something more here than just words, or could this be sort of a badly translated Italian cheeky chappy, not quite understanding the sensitivities of women? Do you think it's more sinister than that, or could this be, I don't want to say a sort of culture clash, but there are sort of two ways to see this, aren't there?
There are two ways to see it, and it has divided people, because we've seen a lot of these people in the public eye, what some are saying, the victim of cancel culture, whereby a comment that they've made has been interpreted the wrong way, and then it's led them to lose their career. So I'm not saying Gino's in the scale of what happened with Hugh Edwards, but I think there may be more coming to light this weekend in terms of other things that may have gone on. But so far, just dealing with what's come out now is it seems to be a case of comments made and suggestive actions. I think there was one of the women said that he'd allegedly made a gesture to down below. So again, it's how do you interpret that? You know, if someone's offended and they feel that that's an aggressive move, that's how they feel. So it's a very, very, very grey area. I mean, obviously there's going to have to be an inquiry.
We'll get more of this information throughout the day and obviously the coming weeks or so. Sarah Louise Robertson, thank you very much.
Now, in response to the claims, Gino D'Acampo's legal team has said Mr D'Acampo categorically denies these allegations of inappropriate sexual behaviour. A separate response from ITV said the broadcaster was not made aware of the original concerns in 2018, and they said ITV is completely committed to creating an environment where everyone is treated with respect and feels able to give of their best. We can categorically confirm that this kind of behaviour is not tolerated by ITV. That's their statement.
Right, well, today the official decision on whether to demolish Grenfell Tower was announced.
Well, this comes as survivors from the Tower Block fire are calling on Angela Rayner to reconsider the decision.
The government has previously said that there will be no changes to the West London site before the 8th anniversary of the disaster in June.
Well, let's get the very latest now with our political correspondent, Catherine Forster. Catherine, Grenfell Tower has stood there since 2017, almost in a state of stasis. What will change?
Yes, well, the announcement from the Department of Housing that Grenfell Tower, 24 stories high, shrouded, as you see, in white with that green heart at the top, since that fire in 2017 that took the lives of 72 people, will be taken down right to the ground. Now, it's becoming increasingly unsafe. That's the fundamental reason behind this. There was a report in 2019 which said that it needed to be taken down by 2022 at the latest. It's extensively propped up. The announcement has been made. There was a meeting with Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister and Housing Secretary, the other day with local residents. Now, some people I spoke to said that they felt they'd been blindsided, that they felt they hadn't been consulted. But I've spoken to other people who said that Angela Rayner and others had been here repeatedly and had consulted very extensively. But there is no agreement on what happens next. Now let's talk now to Emma Spinola. Emma, thank you very much for speaking to us on GB News. You have lived here right next to Grenfell Tower for your whole life. It's incredibly difficult, isn't it? But how do you feel about what should happen with the towers? Is this the right decision?
In my opinion, yeah. I think the tower needs to go. I think for us to able to move on and have a better life and, try and rebuild what we have left of this disaster, it would be better for us for it to go. We're not saying to obviously get rid of it completely and to brush things under the carpet and to forget Grenfell, because that's never going to happen. But we would like it to come down to at least a few floors, maybe leave 1 or 2 floors and have like a memorial site where we can have like a twin tower model with everybody's details on and everybody that was in there, because we obviously don't want to forget them. We'll never forget them. But yeah, I just think living here and looking at it every day doesn't help. So this is something that needs to happen for us to all be able to move on and deal with our lives as an everyday scene.
You knew many people who lived in that building. You lived just next door and you've been moved out of your own house for them to make it safe. How do you feel that 7.5 years on, there's people up and down the country still living in buildings with this dangerous cladding? It was cladding that was put on just for cosmetic reasons to make it look nice, that should never have been used. It beggars belief, doesn't it, that people are still living in these buildings. It hasn't been sorted.
Yeah, it's unbelievable that there are still buildings around London, and everywhere you look, it's popping up on the news that buildings still have this ridiculous stuff on them just to make them look better in areas where there's poverty and stuff like that. To be honest with you, Grenfell never needed this. It was never needed. I don't know why they decided to put this on our tower and cause all this problem and, murder all our people that we grew up with. It's just unreal. And it's like, we don't need this anymore. This needs to stop. There's fires in Spain breaking out because of cladding. There's fires breaking out all over London. It's really not necessary just to make something look better. You'd be better off working with brickwork and painting it back to basics rather than putting clad in to make it look more exciting and everything else. And it's just dangerous and it's killing innocent people for no reason.
Emma, thank you so much for talking to us today. It's obviously incredibly difficult. People in that tower were raising safety concerns for a long time before the fire. They were not listened to, and 7.5 years later, an argument now, of course, about what happens to the site. Of course, there are the remains of many people in that building still. But yet, yes, the fact that nobody really held to account, and lots of people feeling that they weren't listened to then and that they're still not being listened to even now.
Catherine Forster, thanks so much for being there with us and for that report. Good to get the local views on this too.
All right, well, it's just coming up to 25 minutes after 12 o'clock. This is Good Afternoon Britain. Lots more coming up on today's show, including the latest from Downing Street on whether Rachel Reeves will stay on as Chancellor.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Jonathan, in London, we're hearing that there could be more posties from an Amazon point of view in order to limit or cut carbon emissions, but that they could put more people on foot delivering their parcels.
This is really interesting because more and more people now obviously are using Amazon and buying their shopping online or buying gifts online. And it's interesting that in London they're talking about putting their Amazon workers on foot. There are now parts of the country, I think Milton Keynes is one part of the country, where there's robots delivering parcels. Or
really?
You'll see these, well, they call them robots. You'll see these little things sort of bundling down the street.
Yes.
Sort of...
robots.
Yeah, I mean, technically they are a robot, but when I think of a robot, I think of a sort of...
A humanoid robot.
Yeah, sort of humanoid thing, sort of, Lost in Space style robot. But actually, they're sort of... little sort of carriages, little
droids,
boxes.
like Star Wars droid type.
Well, they're not
thing.
even that. They're like a little sort of, they're like a box on wheels, delivering parcels in places like Milton Keynes and other bits of the country. So I think this is just another example of how the world is changing. Online shopping is completely changing the way in which we all live our lives, the way in things.
But I think Milton Keynes lends itself to something like that. This is a newly designed town.
Yeah, exactly. That's why they're in Milton Keynes.
And I really do think that a town like that really does lend itself towards a piece of tech like that. When I think back, our postie in Gloucestershire is a guy called Dave. He's fantastic. Everyone knows who he is. But I'm not sure that he could be replaced by one of these little droid things.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 28 minutes past midday. And today, the Cabinet are having an extra meeting, what some are describing as a secret meeting. Normally, the Cabinet meets on Tuesday. We get readouts. We are allowed to know what's going on and what's being said in the generality. But today, we could be very well witnessing an emergency Cabinet meeting.
But the question is, what is it that they're going to be discussing in that meeting? Well, joining us now, GB News' political editor, Christopher Hope, who's outside Downing Street. Christopher, good morning. Good afternoon, even. Good afternoon. Yeah. I've been on a roll, you see. What can you tell us about this meeting?
Hi Tom, hi Nana. Well, welcome to Downing Street. Now, normally on a Tuesday, behind me would have a cabinet meeting 9:30 till 10:30. Then they would brief us in a meeting with the political, the official spokesman for the Prime Minister, and we'd report that back to you. That's how journalism works. That's how we bring our news to our viewers and listeners of GB News. Today is different. There was an extended cabinet meeting happening somewhere else in central London at an undisclosed location. The political cabinet meet first, a smaller group of key ministers around Keir Starmer. Then the official cabinet meets 12 p.m. Till 4 p.m. But I'm afraid to say the government says they will not give us an official readout of what happens in that meeting. It's been happening somewhere else away from here. Apparently the same thing happened in November, an extended meeting. I think just in terms of openness of the government, not to give us an official readout is surprising and I think unexpected, and we've making those points to Downing Street moments ago.
This is government behind closed doors. I mean, there is, or at least there has been, a 21st century expectation of open government. I mean, we have things like the Freedom of Information Act. We're supposed to know what our elected representatives are discussing, are getting up to. I mean, this flies in the face of any principle of open democracy and, frankly, of a free press.
Well, I think that matters, you see. I mean, I think that normally we get quite an oblique, it's quite a curt 200-word summary of these meetings, but we get to know so little officially of what happens behind us in the building and also wider Whitehall, that these things matter for journalism, and that's why we're making the case. Now, we do know they'll be discussing in generality economic growth, public service reform. Probably what will come up is the Bank of England halving the growth rates of the country this year. That happened yesterday. Better news on the interest rates, though those are falling, but the party is behind, not well behind, but behind in the polls to reform UK. That may be the topic of the political cabinet, but frankly we are waiting to hear more about this, and in terms of holding the government to account, it's vital we get a full readout of what is being said at this weekly meeting of our cabinet. Instead it's being held somewhere else in London. We can't officially say where that place is, although we know it, and equally we can't be told what is being happening at that meeting by the official civil service representative. That is unusual for me.
All right, Christopher, can I ask you about this new runway? Ed Miliband seems to be warming up to the idea this is this thing that was meant to help with growth in the economy. Where are we with this as well? Are they pushing forward with this?
Yeah. Well, we heard from Ed Miliband today. He didn't come on GB News, as he doesn't come on GB News much, but he wasn't on there this morning. He talked to other broadcasters today, and he made clear to them that they're waiting to see what the proposals are from Heathrow. Of course, what Angela Rayner told us last week in Oxfordshire in that big speech was that it's going to be a net zero project. It must make sure it doesn't add to the issues and make it harder to hit those targets of net zero but by 2050. Also happening today, I should say, as Catherine Forster has been reporting so eloquently for GB News, we'll be hearing a written statement from Angela Rayner. She's the Deputy Prime Minister, about the future of the Grenfell Tower in West London. Number been very clear to make clear to us just now that she's had multiple meetings with community groups and families, prioritising that engagement. When she makes this decision, which will become in the next 2 hours, and we'll bring it to you straight away on GB News when it breaks, or Catherine will, she'll making that, taking into account health and safety, mental health and well-being. But she won't be talking to us on camera. There'll be a written statement from the Deputy Prime Minister later today.
Well, Christopher, I hope we'll catch up with you a little bit later in the programme as we learn more. But for now, thanks very much for joining us live from Downing Street.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Up next, the Church of England have asked the public to submit their suggestions for who should be appointed as the new Archbishop of Canterbury. But does anyone really want to take that role following Justin Welby's time in the post? First, though, let's get your latest news headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
Good afternoon, 12:33 is the time. Our top stories. A man who shook his partner's toddler to death has been jailed for life with a minimum term of 25 years for the murder of the 22-month-old child. Christopher Stockton was in sole charge of Charlie Roberts when the boy suffered a fatal head injury at their Darlington family home. More on that as soon as we get it. Well, as you've just been hearing, the Cabinet have been holding an emergency meeting to discuss challenging economic forecasts and their plummeting poll ratings. Downing Street says Keir Starmer has chaired the meeting. It's an effort to tackle Labour's plans for change, investment, reform and growth. However, Rachel Reeves' ambitions to stimulate economic growth were dealt a blow yesterday when the Bank of England halved its forecast for the year and hinted at a further drop in living standards. The bank cut interest rates to 4.5%, with predictions of more to come. In a bid to stimulate the economy, the bank described growth as weak and productivity as tepid. Deputy Lib Dem leader Daisy Cooper has said Rachel Reeves should rethink some of her policies. A new poll has predicted a three-way tie at the next general election, with Labour cabinet ministers set to lose their seats. The survey of almost 5,800 people by Megapol found Reform UK would have 175 seats, up from only 5, with Labour dropping from 412 to 174. Wes Streeting, Yvette Cooper and Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner among those cabinet ministers who'd be likely to lose their seats. And if a general election was held tomorrow, the outcome would be a Conservative Reform UK coalition. Finally, the Liverpool to Manchester railway line is set to be closed for much of the day after a car crashed onto the tracks at Salford. Images from the scene show the vehicle upside down with debris everywhere. causing major disruption to train services on that line this morning and throughout the day, it would seem. Greater Manchester say the driver has been arrested on suspicion of drink driving. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More from me at 1 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. After all the sunshine yesterday, it's going to be a cloudier day ahead, turning rather showery across parts of the south too, and a cold feeling day, particularly in the brisk winds. And why the cold spell? Well, it's all because of high pressure largely dominating across Scandinavia, bringing in a very brisk easterly wind across the country, really adding on to the wind chill across today. And as you can see, plenty of cloud around and rather damp at times across parts of the south and southeast. Some showers moving through here, perhaps turning a little bit wintry across any high ground too. Largely dry to the north of this, and we'll even start to see some sunshine across the northwest of Scotland, perhaps the northwest of Northern Ireland too. And temperatures as it stands around 5 to 6 Celsius as a high for today, but as I say, feeling rather chilly in those brisk winds. To end the day across the south, plenty of showers, these merging into longer spells of rain at times across parts of the south and southeast, falling as snow to higher levels, particularly across parts of Wales. Largely dry across Northern Ireland, northern parts of England and parts of Scotland too. Plenty of cloud, particularly in the east, but some clearer spells just to the northwest of Scotland. That's where it's going to turn particularly chilly overnight, perhaps even seeing some frosty conditions by the time we reach Saturday morning. But this area of rain continuing to push its way into central areas as we head into the overnight period. Once again, likely seeing some snow, particularly across high ground in Wales. Southern parts of the Peak District too could also see some snow, particularly by the time we reach Saturday morning. But across the far southeast, largely falling as rain and still remaining fairly dry to the far northwest of the country too. Colder here though, but with all the cloud, most towns and cities elsewhere remaining above zero. To start off with the weekend, once again, there's going to be plenty of cloud around. The best of the brightness once again to the northwest of the country, where we'll likely see plenty of sunshine. But on the whole, another chilly day ahead and still with a risk of those wintry showers. Bye-bye.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Russell Holding. In Perth and Kinross, the A989 remains closed along Tay Street in Perth because of flooding. Train services are suspended between Falkirk, Grahamston and Cumbernauld because of a signalling problem at Polmont. There are also delays of up to 20 minutes with some cancelled trains between Edinburgh, Waverley and Glasgow Queen Street, and buses replaced trains between Polmont and Dunblane. Buses also replaced trains between Newton and Willows and both Manchester Piccadilly and Manchester Victoria because of overhead line problems and an incident. In South Yorkshire, the A638 is blocked by an accident at Rossington causing queues. In Nottinghamshire, the A614 is closed off the A1 east of Worksop after an accident. In Leicestershire, on the A594, there's a lane closed eastbound along St George's Way in Leicester for emergency repairs, and Gatwick Express train services are suspended after a signalling problem.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 39 minutes past midday, and we're giving you 2 chances to win our latest Great British giveaway, as we've got 2 amazing prize bundles to be won.
Now, each bundle contains a brand new iPhone, £500 to spend in your favourite store, and £10,000 in tax-free cash. If you fancy a chance to win all of that, then here are the details that you need.
The Great British Giveaway is officially 1 year old, and we have a birthday treat for you. We're giving you not 1, but 2 chances to win this month, with 2 prize bundles that include an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash. But that's not all. You'll also get a brand new iPhone 16 and a £500 shopping voucher to spend at your favourite store. So why not be extra lucky this month? For a chance to win an iPhone, vouchers and £10,000 in cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck indeed. Right, it's just coming up to 41 minutes after 12 o'clock.
Now, the public is being invited to suggest names for the next Archbishop of Canterbury. Yes, seriously. This all following Justin Welby's resignation, following the serious children's safeguarding scandal.
People will be able to submit names to the Crown Nominations Commission, the body charged with recommending the new Archbishop to the Prime Minister, who would pass it on to the King.
But will we end up with Bishopy McBishop face? Or would any high-level member of the Church of England feel comfortable taking this post in a turbulent time?
Well, joining us is the Director of Affinity at the Gospel Churches in Partnership, Graham Nichols. Is this quite normal behaviour to sort of get asked to suggest who could potentially take his place?
It is a little bizarre, isn't it? It's normal in the sense that it's part of their process, but I'm not sure really that that will make a lot of difference to who finally gets the post. But I suppose it's a way of saying, well, we're open to suggestion, and it is the national church, so it is connected with government. So I imagine for all those reasons, that's why they're doing it. But it's a bit silly, really, isn't it? Normally you wouldn't expect non-Christian people to, or not connected with that church, to appoint somebody to that role. You just expect them to appoint it within their own body. That would be completely normal and reasonable to do. So it's a bit strange. And as you say, it's who wants the job anyway at this point. But what we want is someone who's much more of a pastor than a politician. We want someone who's going to preach the Bible, preach the gospel, tell people about Jesus, live like Jesus lived, and support and help pastors and vicars and curates and youth workers right across the country, and stop getting involved in all the politics of both within the Church of England and national politics as well. Say things when they feel they're relevant, but mainly get on with being Christians.
Now, I know that officially this is supposed to be the appointment of the King. It hasn't been that for a century or two in reality. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of politics that goes into this, but there isn't democracy in it, and there hasn't traditionally been democracy in it. And I suppose it's sort of strange to think of the Church of England as if it is a democracy, because it isn't. It's a religious institution, and there's a hierarchy within any religious institution. Is this sort of undermining what the Church of England has always been about?
Yeah, but it would be different if you said, well, we're all going to vote on it. We're going to have a referendum, or, first past the post or something else, some voting system. That would be rather strange. I mean, consulting is not bad. Maybe someone will come out of the woodwork from these suggestions that no one has thought of, and they think, oh, he would be brilliant. Maybe Keir Starmer fancies that if he loses his job. But
I think Keir Starmer is one of the first Prime Ministers that we've had that's actually an atheist and says openly that he's an atheist. So perhaps that might not be one for him.
Well, I'm not sure that disqualifies you from being entirely but, because, a lot of it is an administrative role. But that's a bit unfair to other people in the Church of England. But, I mean, generally, there's been bits of the Church of England that really have abandoned the Bible, and so you wonder what they do actually believe. Yeah. But other than that, I think they're very unlikely to be someone who genuinely comes out of the woodwork as a suggestion. It's not being voted on by the public. It's a process that's a little bit mysterious, of this Crown's Commission group of people. And as you say, they put a suggestion to the King, and the King will basically agree to whatever they say.
So this is just performative nonsense that really doesn't have any real basis in reality, because they've already probably picked the person they want to do the job anyway, but they're just doing the thing that many organisations do because they feel they have to.
Yeah, I think that's probably true, but I'm not sure they have picked the person. I think it is a really tough choice. And I'm really hoping and praying a genuine, normal, Orthodox Christian who wants to preach the Bible and talk about Jesus and help pastors. That's who they appoint. And I hope that he's successful in that job.
Or she.
Indeed, I don't think they'll appoint a woman. I think
they should do that, shouldn't they? Should consider one.
Well, they can have women bishops now. I suppose the rules changed recently, didn't they?
Are they allowed women?
They did. They probably can. I'm just suggesting I don't think they will. I mean, the Bishop of London's a bit of a contender, so maybe. And she's a lady, but I think it'll probably be a man.
Well, if they want to get on board with the DEI, then they might want to consider a woman. But anyway, Graham Nichols, really good to talk to you. He's the Director of Affinity at the Gospel Churches in Partnership.
Now we're going to head back to Grenfell because there has been some breaking news. Indeed, the government has confirmed that Grenfell Tower will be demolished. We're going to go live to the site now. Our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, is there for us.
Yes, good afternoon. So the news is now official that Grenfell Tower will be taken down right to the ground. It will be done respectfully and carefully, the government said, so they will continue to support and engage with the community throughout. 24 stories tall since that fire back in 2017. 72 people died. The community completely traumatised. I've been talking to people today who've lived around here for decades, who live right next to the tower, and I have to say most of them feel that taking the tower down is the right decision. There are some people that feel that it perhaps shouldn't be taken all the way down, that perhaps 10 stories should be left, but the prime reason that this is happening is that it is becoming increasingly unsafe. It's propped up, but it is deteriorating, and the longer that this goes on, the worse the condition of the building inside. There was a report back in 2019 advising action to be taken by 2022. So there is a feeling that the time has come. Now it will be 8 years since that fire. This summer, the government have said there'll be no changes to the tower before that, but they will take up to 2 years to take it down. Obviously, it's in a very built-up area, surrounded by houses right next to it, by schools and so on. So no question of using explosive. It seems likely that it will be taken down in stages from the top. Perhaps they will be able to use some very sophisticated machines that will effectively go down floor by floor, sort of bit by bit, and that it can all be done without potentially that a lot of it might be able to be done sort of out of sight, because of course behind that rather sanitised exterior there is a blackened building, a shell, in which there are, of course, the remains of many of the people. People were cremated in that building. Those remains are still there. It's incredibly sensitive. I've been speaking to residents who don't walk past it at night, that feel quite traumatised and are happy that it will be taken down. But of course it's very, very difficult, and what will replace it? How will these people be remembered, and what action will be taken to make sure that this doesn't happen again? Because there were all sorts of warnings about safety in that building from local residents that were not listened to.
Catherine Forster, thank you very much. She's there outside Grenfell Tower. Listen, this is what I would do. I would simply, instead of just taking it down and having a memorial, I would take it down and I'd build the perfect tower and show that I've learnt the lesson. With all the right things for fire safety, the right kind of exterior, everything, and prove that lessons have been learnt. That's what I would do, and set it up as an example of how to do things, not how not to do things. But will they do that? No. They'll probably put a memorial and nothing, and really just not use a prime piece of real estate.
Yeah, I think that having been to Ground Zero in New York, 9/11, the memorial there is very good. They built a new sort of shining tower, taller than the ones that were there before. That was brilliant. Alongside the memorial, I think that's probably the most
build a tower
thing to do. They should
build the perfect tower. Perfect tower.
This is Good Afternoon Britain. Up next, we're looking at the King and Queen. What are they up to? Find out.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
A woman of 53 has believed for 18 months she was in an online relationship with Brad Pitt.
I think we're seeing pictures. So now, these are the pictures that she received that made her believe that she was in this relationship with Brad Pitt.
And you'll see that some of it is in hospital because the scammer was claiming that he was suffering from cancer. This was playing very much on her emotion. So this is a divorcee who lived in Mauritius. She'd received a £700,000 divorce settlement, or £650,000 divorce settlement, I should say, and £700,000 has been taken from her through this scam.
Yeah.
as she was becoming every time she became suspicious, the money was taken for payment of charges on gifts that she never received, and then hospital fees. There was lots of emotions being played into there. Now, as somebody, I'm a rom-com writer by trade, so I write romantic fiction. And one of the books I've written has actually been about somebody who did online dating, got herself into a whole heap of trouble. Not quite. She wasn't in a relationship with Brad Pitt, but she met somebody dodgy. So because I've written that book, I've met a lot of people who've come up to me and said, "Oh, it's happened to me."
It's scary in this digital age, isn't it?
They've lost 700,000, but somebody has tried it on. Somebody my question is, would a man go 18 months in a relationship online without seeing somebody and keep it going? Or is this feeding into this neediness of a particular demographic of a woman who that's better than anything else she got going on in her life, was what was being fed to her over the internet?
And then maybe a little bit of her knew, but she kind of just suppressed it because she
was hoping it was Brad Pitt.
Her daughter apparently for a year was saying, this can't be true, come on, think about it. But she just fell for it. But I just wonder, it's a very sad story. She's obviously now getting a lot of hate and ridicule as well.
Because she's been on French TV and she had a huge amount of pushback from it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Now, the King and Queen will host actor Stanley Tucci in a formal dinner this evening at Highgrove in celebration of slow food and slow fashion.
Goodness me. Well, the actor's trip to the palace comes ahead of the royal state visit to Italy in early April this year, where they'll be joining Pope Francis in celebrating the Jubilee year and carry out engagements in Rome and Ravenna. Well, Cameron is with us here, our royal correspondent. A busy year for the King and Queen.
Yeah, he really is. King's still continuing his cancer treatments weekly, but he is still very much ramping up his international travel. A full programme of international travel we're expecting him to take part in this year. I was told, actually, when he was in Australia, that it was the perfect tonic for him because it gives him that boost. He loves meeting people, he loves travelling, and that's exactly what he will be doing in April with the Queen, coinciding with their 20th wedding anniversary. But to coincide with the up-and-coming state visits, he's hosting a special dinner, as you said, at Highgrove this evening, all with Italian cuisine at its heart, but grown British in the Highgrove Garden and other areas in the United Kingdom. And it's based on slow food, because in 1986 there were nationwide protests, Tom, in Italy, because a McDonald's, heaven forbid, was going to be built in a sacred square in Rome called the Piazza di Spagna. And there was such uproar that this slow food movement started, which was all about preserving traditional cuisine and sustainable food and Italian food. Exactly.
Can I just ask, how did the King look? Because now you've been let in, because GB News can now get in nice and close, and you're seeing them actually head on. How does he look? Does he look well?
I think he looks really well at the moment. He is engaging with a lot of people. You can really tell that he makes a point of trying to meet as many people as he possibly can at various engagements. I was with him at the Poland Centre, Europe's largest Polish community centre in London earlier this week, and he really took his time to meet as many people as possible. Good spirits. He was laughing with people, bantering. He reunited with a World War II veteran, 102 years old. So yeah, he's keeping calm and carrying on.
And this despite his treatment still continuing.
It is. So I mean, obviously we're not going into details of what kind of treatment he's having, but we do know that he's still having weekly cancer treatments. But he is very much, I mean, you see from the engagements he's done over the last few weeks since Christmas, he's just keeping himself very busy.
How much, how far ahead are we allowed to know the itinerary of the King? Because I've always been surprised, Cameron, talking to you on this show, just how busy he seems to be. I mean, I was perhaps expecting a less rigorous agenda for the King, who is, of course, undergoing treatment.
Well, you look at any royal, Princess Anne is another example, that kind of generation, they don't slow down and they're not going to retire. So it appears to just be continuing to work. I mean, we find out engagements are happening. We're never given a full programme as to what's going to be happening later on in the year. But from my understanding, the plan is for him to carry out a full programme of international travel in 2025. And, of course, we're seeing him do smaller engagements in the UK as well, as is the Princess Royal, as is the Queen, as is the Prince and Princess of Wales. It's ramping up this year.
Wow, it's fascinating, isn't it? But travel is tiring, but when you're first class, then it's probably a little bit easier.
Yes, when you've got a private jet.
It's your own plane, your own people, they cook for you and clean for you, and I'd be all right with that. Cameron Walker, thank you very much.
Was that a pitch, Nana?
What, to cook and clean?
Well, no.
I forget that.
To join the royal family, of course.
Absolutely, I will make the most of it. I'm no Meghan Markle.
When Prince George is of age.
Yes.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Don't go anywhere. We're going to be back, of course, looking at this extraordinary and unusual extra cabinet meeting. That's next.
Want to be one of 2 lucky Great British giveaway winners? That's right, you could win one of 2 prize bundles, which includes a brand new iPhone 16, £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in your favourite store, and an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. What would you spend that cash on? For a chance to win an iPhone, vouchers and £10,000 in cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good Afternoon Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Lisa, you got in touch with me and you flagged this survey because you were concerned as a parent that your child had been given this to fill out.
Yeah, I mean, my daughter came home from school, she was very confused. She was asking why somebody would want to hurt themselves if they were feeling sad or worried about something. So that led to a conversation that we had, and I actually phoned the school and asked them to send me the survey, which with a lot of pushing, they eventually did send me the survey. And when I read through it, I was just completely shocked at the content. The survey says when I'm feeling worried that maybe I should try cutting or harming myself, because it's in the survey, so that must be an option. I've tried everything else, so why not try this?
It is astonishing that some of these are young children who are perhaps being introduced to these, these abuses for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, there's a list of 17 different types of drugs, some of which I've actually never heard of myself. I mean, the wording on here is, have you ever got high from taking drugs? I mean...
And we know that some of these behaviours, self-harm, gender dysphoria, taking drugs, are psychologically contagious. Children do them because they see other children do them, or they find out about them from the internet or from surveys like this. So the idea that this is just information gathering and won't go any further than that is ridiculous. There was a similar survey in Scotland, I think, about 3 years ago, where children the same age, 11, 12, 13, were asked about their sex lives. How many times have you had sex in the last year? How did you have sex? Did you use contraception? Totally normalising underage sex. So the idea that children are just mini adults and we can confront them with all the same kind of ideas and dilemmas that adults have to face is just ridiculous.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on February the 4th of February. No, Friday the 4th. No, it's not even the 4th, it's the 7th. Oh, Miriam, can you please do that? I'm completely lost.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Friday the 7th of February. I'm Miriam Cates.
And I'm Tom Harwood.
Well, crisis meetings for the Prime Minister and his cabinet in an extended and unusual summit at an undisclosed location. This as the Reform Party tops 2 nationwide polls and the Bank of England halves its growth rate forecast.
Which is bad news for the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, who's reportedly now been put on notice following the bleak assessment from the bank and, with stagnant growth and higher inflation, recalling the grim economic days of the 1970s.
Elsewhere, a massive MRP seat-by-seat mega-poll shows the Tories and Reform could win enough seats between them to hold a majority at the next general election. But would Nigel Farage cut a deal with Kemi?
And Donald Trump has turned his fire towards the International Criminal Court, which last year issued a controversial arrest warrant for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Trump is set to swipe the international body with sweeping sanctions. Well, I need to learn my numbers. The number 7 was written on the screen there, and I just said the word 4. I don't know what's going on. It's a Friday. I'm going to put it down to that.
And sometimes if you've got something in your head, you just can't get over that when you're reading out.
Goodness
I know.
me, honestly.
I've often nearly said my name is your name or whoever else. Hi, I'm Tom Harwood, if it's first in the script.
It might look like an easy job, but trust me.
There are complications.
They're complicated. Reading numbers from 1 to 10. I wouldn't try it if I were you. But this is a serious show, though. We will be talking about serious things. Of course, we learnt in the last hour that we're not going to be told a single thing that is mentioned at this cabinet meeting. Normally, a cabinet meeting is given a readout. Journalists are told not word by word, but generally what was discussed. This meeting, however, secret.
Is that because it's a political cabinet, so no civil servants?
Yeah.
OK, so they don't have to keep official records?
And that's why also it's not being done in Downing Street. It's in an undisclosed location elsewhere in London. But this, of course, comes at a time of really quite troubling economic news for the government. They put their singular focus on growth, and the growth forecast has just been halved.
Yes, and we're going to be talking about this later on, but it does seem we're now caught in this spiral of stagflation where inflation, yes, it's down on the kind of post-COVID Ukraine heights, but it's still a lot higher than it has been historically, and we're struggling to grow, which means the Chancellor's got very little headroom in terms of what she can tweak. It's very worrying indeed. But I was looking at the inflation figures in the 70s on the way, and they were up to 25% one year, so we're not quite at those staggering levels.
No, but the Bank of England sort of suggesting we might get back up to 4%. Not quite the
but of course, people are a lot more indebted than they were in the 70s, so it has equal impact, possibly.
Yeah, well, what do you think? gbnews.com/your say is the way to get involved. But we'll get to it all after your news headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
Hi there, very good afternoon to you. It's 1:03. Let's get you up to date with our top stories. It's been confirmed Grenfell Tower will be demolished, with the process likely to take 2 years. The government says it will carry out the work sensitively, with no changes before the 8th anniversary of the disaster, which comes in June. Grenfell United has accused Angela Rayner, who informed local communities about the decision on Wednesday. She's been accused of ignoring the voices of people who lost family in the fire, which killed 72 people in June of 2017. Much more as we get it here on GB News. Meanwhile, a man who shook his partner's toddler to death has been jailed for life with a minimum term of 25 years for the murder of the 22-month-old. Christopher Stockton was in sole charge of Charlie Roberts when the boy suffered a fatal head injury in their Darlington family home. His mother, Paula, left her son in Stockton's care to attend an eye test. Within minutes of her leaving, he called 999 to report the toddler had gone floppy. Roberts, who admitted to neglecting the boy prior to the murder, has been jailed for 4 years. 2 people are known to have died and 2 others injured when a small plane crashed into vehicles on a busy road in the Brazilian city of Sao Paulo. Some live pictures here. The plane crashed on the Marquês de São Vicente Avenue at around 7:20 local time, 7:20 a.m. These images show a bus on fire, or at least it's been put out now. The aircraft, a small twin-engine aircraft, had left Campo de Marta Airport. The contact tower lost contact with the plane minutes later. The cause is being investigated. Well, the Cabinet are holding an emergency meeting to discuss the challenging economic forecasts and plummeting poll ratings. Downing Street says Sir Keir Starmer has been chairing a so-called secret meeting. It's all about tackling Labour's plan for change, investment, reform and growth. It's a fresh blow to the Chancellor's hopes of stimulating the economy after the Bank of England halved its forecast for the year and hinted at a drop in living standards. The bank cut interest rates yesterday to 4.5%. It also described growth as weak and productivity tepid. It's likely that household finances will come under further pressure. Deputy Lib Dem leader Daisy Cooper says Rachel Reeves should rethink some of her policies.
The government is absolutely right to say that growth is its #1 priority, but the government's measures simply don't stack up. And the announcements just yesterday and the warnings that growth is going to be much lower than previously forecasted should be a real wake-up call for the Chancellor. We have said that she should cancel the jobs tax, which the government is planning to bring into effect in April. And we do think as well there's a very strong case for the government to renegotiate the botched Brexit deal that we have with the EU to try and get rid of the red tape that is holding back British businesses from doing all the trade that they could be doing right now.
The new polls predicted a three-way tie at the next general election, with Labour cabinet ministers set to lose their seats. The survey of almost 58,000 people by Megapoll found Reform UK would be up from 5 seats to 175, 74, and the Tories gaining about 50. Wes Streeting, Yvette Cooper and Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner among those set to lose their seats if a general election was to be held tomorrow. The Liverpool to Manchester railway line is set to be closed for much of the day after a car crashed onto the railway tracks at Salford. Now, these images show the vehicle upside down, surrounded by debris. It's caused major disruption to those services today between Manchester and Liverpool. Police say the driver of the car has been arrested on suspicion of drink driving. And celebrity chef Gino De Campos denied allegations of inappropriate behaviour on the sets of his TV programme. You're fully up to date here on GB News. I'll be back with more at 1:30.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 8 minutes past 1. Now, the government is refusing to release details on the Prime Minister's ongoing secret cabinet meeting, with many calling it a crisis meeting with his inner circle.
Many reports claim that the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, is on notice after her plans for growth have been dealt a major blow after another poor forecast from the Bank of England.
Well, joining us now is the economist and wealth manager Jonathan Davis, because Jonathan, it's not just the low growth that the Bank of England is predicting, but also inflation that could shoot back up near to 4%.
Yes, that's the relatively short term. Long term, I think we need to expect something broadly similar to the 60s and 70s. With materially higher inflation. I would estimate 5 to 10% per annum inflation on the average, materially higher interest rates, and therefore materially lower economic growth for the next 10, 20 years.
Now, one of the things that the Bank of England have pointed at is the quite significant growth in public sector jobs since COVID, I think around 500,000 public sector jobs, but no noticeable increase in productivity. And at the same time, the private sector is flatlining. How is Rachel Reeves going to stimulate growth? Actually, the only thing that is growing at the moment is the size of the public sector.
Exactly. We're rapidly moving back to a semi-communist state, just like in the 60s and 70s, which caused ultimately the national industrial action and the 3-day week. Because, of course, in those days, pretty well the government employed everyone, the workers, the coal miners, the transportation, you name it. Before privatisation, the government employed and owned practically everything and everyone. And while you have a largely communist government, you're not going to have economic growth and you're not going to have economic prosperity for the people. As ever, the political class and the billionaires are going to do exceptionally well, but the people are going to do exceptionally badly.
OK, here's a free market case for the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves. She has ended the universal winter fuel allowance payments that was, perhaps, one might describe it as a more communist benefit, giving millionaires free money every winter. That's no longer the case. And also she's talking about red tape, approving runways, making it easier and faster to build stuff, particularly to allow the private sector to come in and build small modular nuclear reactors, to build houses, to build other energy infrastructure. Is there not a bit of Javier Milei in this Chancellor? Yes, perhaps 1/4 of his index finger. Look, Trump has said beautifully, for every new regulation he brings in, he'll get rid of 10. Javier Milei, my hero, has abolished 1/3 of the state in the last year, and Argentina's economy is growing like wildfire. Their stock market is soaring. Their unemployment is rapidly reducing. Their inflation is back to normal sort of Western developed economy levels. Until and unless a UK government gets rid of a broad brush load of regulations, load of quangos, hundreds of thousands of public sector workers, reduces taxes, in other words, goes towards the free markets that we experienced in the 1980s, until and unless that happens, and by the way, we haven't had it since the 1990s, until we have it, we're not going to have economic growth. Of course, there will be winners, but in general, there will be losers.
Jonathan Davis, Wealth Manager, thank you very much for that, sadly, very negative assessment. Well, we're giving you 2 chances to win in our latest Great British giveaway, as we have 2 amazing prize bundles to be won. Each bundle contains a brand new iPhone, £500 to spend in your favourite store and £10,000 in tax-free cash.
So, fancy a chance to be one of these 2 winners? Well, here are all the details you need.
The Great British Giveaway is officially 1 year old, and we have a birthday treat for you. We're giving you not 1, but 2 chances to win this month, with 2 prize bundles that include an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash. But that's not all. You'll also get a brand new iPhone 16 and a £500 shopping voucher to spend at your favourite store. So why not be extra lucky this month? For a chance to win an iPhone, vouchers and £10,000 in cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Well, a new poll has predicted a 3-way tie at the next general election, with the Tories looking at winning up to 178 seats.
Now, this is an important poll because it's not just your common or garden, just ask 2,000 people poll. This is what's known as an MRP, multi-level regression and post-stratification analysis. This basically does seat-by-seat analysis. It's a huge statistical task. And it says that actually the outcome, if an election were held tomorrow, would be a Conservative reform likely coalition.
And some big Labour names, cabinet ministers no doubt, could lose their seats. Well, we're joined now by Shadow Financial Secretary to the Treasury, Gareth Davies MP. Gareth, this is, if you're an impartial observer, this would be a fascinating poll. British politics is in a place it hasn't been for perhaps 100 years in terms of being a 3-horse race, but it's not great news for the Conservatives, is it?
Well, good afternoon. Good to see you. Good for the neutral, as they say, these polls. But I think, look, as you know, Miriam, just as well as I do, polls come and go. Poll just the other day showed the Conservatives are ahead. We just have to be patient until the next general election. But what we can do in the meantime, as Conservatives, is, one, acknowledge why we lost, admit why we lost and why we lost the support and trust of millions of people throughout the country. That's the first step. And the second is to put forward a professional opposition. We are His Majesty's official opposition, put forward a professional operation to ensure that we are scrutinising and holding this Labour government to account. And then thirdly, put forward policy options, demonstrate our values to the British public to win that trust back and then win the election.
But Gareth, I mean, the Labour Party just a year ago was polling, above 40%. Now they're barely meeting 25% in the polls. There's a crisis meeting of the Cabinet happening as we speak, which journalists, by the way, aren't allowed to know what's being said in. And all the while, we've had growth forecasts slashed in half by the Bank of England, inflation now heading in the wrong direction. Surely your party should be making more hay here, given, frankly, the situation the country faces.
Well, I think one of the things that we're doing is making sure that people know what's going on in the economy. And as you were just pointing out on your show, we now have a situation where we're heading for stagflation, a situation which we've not seen since the 1970s when Labour were in power back then, where inflation is going up, which makes everybody else poorer, while growth is weaker and going down. And this is a remarkable situation just after 6 months when they inherited, not a perfect situation in the economy on the back of a couple of big crises in the country, but a much better situation than we have today. And I think, to your point, it is our job now to educate and communicate what is going on and what has caused this dire situation. The answer is Labour. And two, to make sure that we offer a credible economic platform for the country that is deliverable. And that's part of my job.
Gareth, I think many people would accept that decisions of the Labour government since the election have not been good for the economy, and certainly the increase in employers' national insurance and other decisions like that. But there are much more long-term structural problems in the economy, aren't there? Like, for example, our declining dependency ratio. So each year we have fewer and fewer working-age people to pensioners. That's a problem that's not going to go away, whoever's in power. And this question of how we resolve our enormous pension deficit is one that governments keep kicking down the road. What is the Conservatives' answer going to be to that problem?
Well, I think that's a very fair point on a number of different areas. Reform is needed for long-term progression. You talked about the demographic situation. Clearly, I don't think anybody would deny that's a problem. But as you have said, I don't think any government over many decades have really grappled this. Just as on infrastructure, I think, to offer a bit of support, we welcome some of the things that this Labour government are trying to do. We've offered provisional support for the Heathrow expansion if they can execute on it properly. We want to see more infrastructure in this country. One of the reasons we had a big push and introduced the UK Infrastructure Bank, for example, under my time. But we do have to get those things right. But we can't deny, Miriam, that there are a lot of, and I won't be doing my job if I don't highlight the fact that I'm afraid since the budget, we have businesses in my constituency here in Grantham and across the country who are really suffering, who are having to hire less people or in some cases get rid of people because their costs have gone up so high. Now, if we're talking about economic growth, yes, we should be talking about long-term reform, long-term investment and long-term building, but that is not, meaning as much if you are completely trashing those who create growth and wealth and take risk today. And that's the problem that we've got. There's no point having pro-growth deregulation if you've got anti-growth taxation. And that's the situation we're in today. And that's what the Bank of England have basically alluded to. They said that the national insurance contributions increase will increase inflation in April. It's causing employment issues and growth has been downgraded as a result. This is not a good situation.
OK, well, Gareth Davies, Shadow Financial Secretary to the Treasury, really appreciate your time on Good Afternoon Britain this afternoon. Thanks for joining us. Interesting that the Conservative Party will be backing the Labour Party on things that, frankly, the Conservative Party didn't do in power. I mean, they didn't approve a third run. Well, I mean, there were so many it was backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards. There were votes. I think the final position of the last Parliament was that Heathrow had been given qualified backing, but then there was no plan to go forward because it had been messed around so much. And similarly, I mean, the most expensive nuclear power plants in the world, now the Conservative Party say they'll back the nuclear announcement by this government. But it begs the question, what were they doing before?
Well, exactly. And ever since the Blair government, we've had so many of these kind of single-issue quangos, if you like, the Environment Agency, all the others. Well, we don't want this to happen because of badgers. We don't want this to happen because of newts. We don't want this to happen because of nutrient qualities. And then there's 1,000 different hold-ups, and Labour are discovering that for themselves now.
The Welsh Planning Inspectorate blocked a nuclear power station. This has just been in the papers this morning. Blocked a power station because of the effect it would have on the Welsh language. Because people would move to the area who didn't speak Welsh.
Oh, my
and
goodness.
The Welsh Planning Inspectorate saw its role not to promote economic growth in Wales, which, by the way, needs a lot more economic growth, but instead they didn't want any new people coming to the area because fewer people would speak Welsh.
This is the problem with single-issue campaigns, whether they're charities or paid for the government, is it's all very well to highlight issue and raise awareness, as people like to say. But if you're in government, you have to balance all these things, and then nobody's happy, and it's very difficult. I'm not making excuses at all. The government should have ploughed through and got rid of some of these quangos, but the Labour Party is finding itself in the same position that the Conservatives were.
I mean, I just remember David Cameron back in 2010 saying time was bonfire for the quangos.
Oh, no,
I mean, which quangos actually went on the bonfire? I'm struggling to think
we have a department for value for money, which sounds very Yes Minister to me.
Run by the guy who used to run HS2.
That's right.
Yeah.
A ringing endorsement.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and coming up, President Trump issues financial sanctions on the International Criminal Court. But why has he done that? Well, find out after this.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We were talking earlier about the issue of Siri listening to you. Well, it's not just your own conversations being sort of harvested for data. But it's a problem with AI. So what seems to have happened yesterday is that Apple issued a alert saying that Luke Littler had won the darts before he had. I mean, imagine what would, if he then gone on to lose, how that would have looked. I mean, obviously, because he went on to win, at least they got the story right. But before it had happened. So what it seems to happen is that the AI farms existing stories. And what it has done, that's the alert. We can see the alert there. Now, and it also claiming that Brazilian tennis player Rafael Nadal had come out as gay when actually a different Brazilian tennis player was actually mentioned in the original story. So what it does is you see that's branded as BBC Sport. What the Apple AI system does is it farms alerts that it thinks people are getting from the source and then summarises them into
going to be my question.
into one alert.
It looks to me like you would assume, OK, the BBC are reporting this.
Absolutely.
So the BBC News might be saying something else.
So it could happen to any news organisation.
This has highlighted a massive issue. I mean, having editorial judgment and quality control, because if this is going on, it's just contributing to the flow of misinformation. And we know that this is a problem on social media, people reporting false things. But if it seems to come from trusted news sources, that is a massive issue in credibility. I mean, if you had something like Reuters, who's a big news provider, doing this, you could hold people accountable, you could make changes, but when it's the AI doing it, I mean, what do? You're going to have to reprogram it in some way.
And if you just lost control, if you're a news source, you've lost control of what goes out because it basically farms it, puts your logo on it, and sends it out even when it's nonsense.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 25 minutes past 1. Now, President Trump has signed an executive order imposing sanctions on the International Criminal Court, accusing it of illegitimate actions against the United States and Israel, neither of which, of course, recognise the court.
Well, the order enacts financial and visa restrictions on individuals and their families who are assisting ICC investigations involving American citizens or their allies.
Well, let's discuss this now with the chair of Republicans Overseas UK, Greg Swenson. Greg, this is a bolshy move from the president.
Yeah, I'm not surprised at all. In fact, if you're wondering why he didn't do it on day one, it's because they went to the Congress to try to get it passed. It was passed in the House, of course, the Republican House, but you need 60 votes in the Senate. So, of course, John Fetterman was the only Democrat to vote for it, which shows you how sick the rest of the Democrats are. But yeah, this was long overdue. We had hoped, of course, Biden would do it. You know, not with any great confidence, but he should have, Joe Biden. He didn't, and then, you know, I thought President Trump would do it on day one, but there was a bill in Congress by Chip Roy and Tom Cotton, who were a congressman and senator, who really proposed the same thing, essentially. And because it was shot down by the Democrats, Trump went ahead and did it.
Do you think this will send a signal to US allies? Because, of course, it was a very, very controversial decision by the ICC in the first place to sanction Netanyahu. I mean, whether you believe in the legitimacy of the ICC or not,
no,
the fact is, first of all, Israel are not partner to it, and secondly, on what grounds do they taking to task a leader of a democratic nation who could have been taken to task by his own people? So, illegitimate decision. But so far, European countries, the US allies, are going very much in the other direction and supporting the ICC decision. Do you think we could see a change of heart after this?
I hope so, and I think, you know, Keir Starmer's making a great mistake by supporting this, and it just shows you the virtue signaling that's going on in this continent, and especially in Brussels. I don't think the people would endorse that at all here in the UK, and so I think it's a big mistake. It's giving legitimacy to the ICC, which is in effect giving legitimacy to Hamas by making it easier to kill Palestinians.
Although at the time that the arrest warrant came out, there was a huge amount of ambiguity from France, Germany and the UK. I think first Germany broke the line saying they wouldn't enforce the warrant, and very clear to see. I mean, Germany's got a history here when it comes to, well, the Jewish
They need
state,
to support it.
Yeah. And then France followed suit, and the UK followed suit as well, saying, oh, would we enforce this? We're not sure if we would or not, already undermining the court in many ways. I mean, this is a court that was founded in 2002. Do you think it can actually go forward in the way that it has done for the last 2 decades?
Because it's just basically a progressive radical left agenda masquerading as international law. And so they have no legitimacy, right? There's no legislature to make the laws. There's no executive to enforce the laws. All it is a bunch of bureaucrats and typically progressive left anti-Semitic bureaucrats. So it's really illegitimate. George W. Bush dropped out in 2002 because it was never approved by the Senate. It never went to the Senate because they knew Bill Clinton signed it on his last day in office, knowing that he couldn't get it through the Senate. So it's really atrocious, and I'm glad that the US dropped it.
Although there are African countries that sign up to it, European countries, all of South American countries, and it has been useful to prosecute Yugoslavian war criminals, for instance, who sort of were skipping international justice. I mean, there is almost a need for a framework of international justice when it comes to people who run rogue states.
And there's the ICJ. I mean, there are other institutions to do it, but in this case, you know, it's really hypocritical. You know that and of course they put in, oh, we're also, you know, indicting or putting out arrest warrants for 3 dead Hamas leaders, right? So it's virtue signaling combined with moral relativism, comparing Israel to these 3 radical Hamas leaders that have been killed, thank goodness. But, you know, it's just, again, moral equivalency gone wild.
It's really interesting to see the scales falling from the eyes of liberals or, you know, ordinary voters, particularly in the United States at the moment when it comes to these massive international organisations. It's been fascinating to watch the reaction to Trump pulling the plug on US aid and the revelations about where millions and millions of US tax dollars are going.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the kind of reaction in America to this discovery?
It's, you know, when you first saw we're cutting aid, the first thing you think of is starving children in Africa, which is something I'm very involved in with myself. But then when you read the other things they had, not only is it a massive waste of money, but it's very anti-American, first of all. It has nothing to do with our policies or our security interests, but also it creates more anti-American sentiment. If you have a trans opera in Serbia or a trans comic book in Peru, these people are going to look at that and say, America's crazy. I don't want any part of these.
Why would we want to partner with them? Yeah.
It's nuts.
And then there was money that was going to independent news organisations.
Right.
I mean, Politico, for instance. Which,
BBC.
I think they do great work, Politico and the BBC, but I mean, the idea that they were being funded by the American taxpayer, I mean, this was hidden from everyone.
That was a payoff. They paid $76 million. The Biden administration paid $76 million as a payoff to get favourable coverage. And they completely overlooked Joe Biden's cognitive issues. They completely overlooked his family's the Biden family cartel that was looting taxpayers, but more importantly, getting paid by foreign adversaries. So it's just amazing how Politico covered up for and you can argue much of the corporate media or traditional media did as well. But Politico, in particular, was aggressively protecting Joe and Dr. Jill and the rest of them.
In order for some of the changes that President Trump is making to become permanent, he's using the executive orders at the moment. Do any of these need to be put on statute by elected members?
It's always better to do that, for sure.
Because otherwise it could be reversed.
Yes, and also many of his executive orders were just reversing Joe Biden's idiotic executive orders. So some of that will pass easily. But I do think there'll be some pushback from the courts. There'll be some pushback from legislatures. So, you know, it's not a perfect method, but I think he's hit the ground running, and so far, so good.
Yeah, I suppose it sort of explains it that there was a bill that had passed the House. Obviously, the people that started thinking, well, this does need some legislative footing, this could all be repealed in a lower court, a circuit court, or the Supreme Court.
It won't all be, but some of it could be. You know, there's always that risk with executive orders. So I think it's President Trump's way of saying, okay, the voters voted for us to do these things. Let's do it. And I think the voters actually appreciate it. The citizens. People are fired up in the U.S. right now.
Yeah.
The enthusiasm is
Well, I think the polling on the decision to keep men out of women's sport was phenomenal. Even amongst Democratic voters, it was well over 50%.
It just shows you how insane the Democrats became when they were co-opted by the woke progressive wing of the party, which is not the majority of Democrats. And every Democrat voted against that bill when it was proposed last year. So, in other words, every Democrat wanted men playing in women's sports.
It was really interesting to see how this plays out as the Democrat Party tries to rebuild. And I know we're a long way out from the next presidential election, but it'll be fascinating to watch.
I think you'll see them bend on those kind of things.
Well, Greg Swenson, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for being here in the studio to talk through all matters American.
Well, you're watching Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. We've got lots more coming up on today's show, including why homegrown British film and television productions are struggling to get funding against the likes of Netflix and Amazon. But first, here's the news headlines with Erin Armstrong.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. It is 1:33. Our top story, some breaking news. It's been confirmed Grenfell Tower will be demolished, with the process likely to take 2 years. The government says it will carry out the works sensitively, with no changes to be made before the 8th anniversary of the disaster in June. Bereaved families and survivors are understood to have been told by the Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner on Wednesday. However, Grenfell United has accused Ms Rayner, the Housing Secretary, of ignoring their voices. 72 people died in the fire in June 2017. More breaking news. A man who shook his partner's toddler to death has been jailed for life with a minimum term of 25 years. Christopher Stockton was in sole charge of 22-month-old Charlie Roberts when the boy suffered a fatal head injury in their home in Darlington. His mother, Paula Roberts, left her son in Stockton's care to take an eye test. Within minutes of her leaving, Stockton called 999 to report the toddler had gone floppy. Roberts, who admitted to neglecting the boy prior to the murder, has been jailed for 4 years. The Liverpool to Manchester railway line is set to be closed for much of the day after a car crashed onto the tracks at Salford. Images from the scene show a vehicle had come to rest upside down, surrounded by debris in Salford. It's caused major disruption, of course, to that line. And efforts are now being made to take the wreckage away. Greater Manchester Police say the driver of the car was arrested on suspicion of drink driving. A cold snap is on the way, with temperatures set to plummet as low as -7 in parts of the country over the coming days. A yellow cold weather warning comes into force today for much of the country. The Met Office is warning that the coldest temperature will be in Scotland, and it could drop to -4 in the north of England and Wales, where snow, a couple of centimetres at least, might be seen. It means there's an increased use of healthcare services by vulnerable people and a greater risk of death. But a return to the dreaded beast from the east is unlikely. And the public's being invited to St James for the next Archbishop of Canterbury following Justin Welby's resignation. His replacement will be the 106th appointment to the role. It comes almost exactly a month after Mr Welby stepped down over safeguarding failings. People will be able to submit names to the Crown Nominations Commission, the body charged with recommending the new Archbishop to the Prime Minister, who will then pass it on to the King. That is it for the moment. I'll be back with more later.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. After all the sunshine yesterday, it's going to be a cloudier day ahead, turning rather showery across parts of the south too, and a cold feeling day, particularly in the brisk winds. And why the cold spell? Well, it's all because of high pressure largely dominating across Scandinavia, bringing in a very brisk easterly wind across the country, really adding on to the wind chill across today. And as you can see, plenty of cloud around and rather damp at times across parts of the south and southeast. Some showers moving through here, perhaps turning a little bit wintry across any high ground too. Largely dry to the north of this, and we'll even start to see some sunshine across the northwest of Scotland, perhaps the northwest of Northern Ireland too. And temperatures as it stands around 5 to 6 Celsius as a high for today, but as I say, feeling rather chilly in those brisk winds. To end the day across the south, plenty of showers, these merging into longer spells of rain at times across parts of the south and southeast, falling as snow to higher levels, particularly across parts of Wales. Largely dry across Northern Ireland, northern parts of England and parts of Scotland too. Plenty of cloud, particularly in the east, but some clearer spells just to the northwest of Scotland. That's where it's going to turn particularly chilly overnight, perhaps even seeing some frosty conditions by the time we reach Saturday morning. But this area of rain continuing to push its way into central areas as we head into the overnight period. Once again, likely seeing some snow, particularly across high ground in Wales. Southern parts of the Peak District too could also see some snow, particularly by the time we reach Saturday morning. But across the far southeast, largely falling as rain and still remaining fairly dry to the far northwest of the country too. Colder here though, but with all the cloud, most towns and cities elsewhere remaining above zero. To start off with the weekend, once again, there's going to be plenty of cloud around. The best of the brightness once again to the northwest of the country, where we'll likely see plenty of sunshine. But on the whole, another chilly day ahead and still with a risk of those wintry showers. Bye-bye.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Russell Holding. In Perth and Kinross, the A989 remains closed in both directions along Tay Street in Perth. The floodgates have been closed there since the 24th of January. On the M180 in South Yorkshire, 2 lanes are closed westbound after an accident between Junction 1 for the A18 at Bawtry and Junction 5 of the M18 north of Doncaster, causing delays. Also in South Yorkshire, the A638 is blocked by an accident at Rossington, causing queues. Now, buses replaced trains between Newton the Willows in both Manchester Piccadilly and Manchester Victoria because of an incident and because of overhead line problems. Buses also replacing Transpennine Express services between Manchester Victoria and Liverpool Lime Street. And in Nottinghamshire, the A614 is closed off the A1 east of Worksop after an accident. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 20 to 2. Are we witnessing the death of British TV? Well, UK broadcasters are warning that they're simply being priced out of high-end dramas by streaming giants such as Netflix and Amazon.
Well, it follows revelations that the director and cast of the BBC drama Wolf Hall had to take out a significant pay cut to make a second series of the show because no streaming service would agree to co-fund it.
Well, this follows the British Film Institute confirming that its investment into premium British TV shows reached its lowest level in nearly a decade.
Let's get the thoughts now of former BBC producer and editor John Mayer. John, this is a concern to some people, but perhaps this is just the way the market is going. I mean, services like Netflix produce some brilliant TV. Why should the BBC have the monopoly?
British terrestrial television, not just drama, is on its knees. Public service television is under real threat. I mean, the advertising channels, 3, 4 and 5, are having to scrape around for money. The BBC, as you well know, it is down to the bone, and the licence fee is up for renewal in 2 years' time. So it's not just drama, it's everything else. But let's talk about drama. I mean, British drama is, I don't think they've got it right. They come in, they do a run of 6 programmes. By the time they arrive, they've gone. So, you know, they should actually think longer term. They should think, should it be 2 programmes like the post office programme, which has an effect, or should it be 10 or 12? You know, they're all into little bites, and they're all the same. I mean, there's an awful lot of police procedural programmes. You know, they need to think outside of that box and think outside of that box quickly. And the ones who break the mould will be the ones who will succeed. I mean, let's think of something like the SAS series the BBC just had. That broke the mould. That hit through, but an awful lot of it just flows over you, and you think, you know, why has anybody made 6 programmes on this? And it's just another police programme, another way of looking at it. So think of the longer runs. Britain has enormous talent in production, enormous talent in acting, of course. And of course, the BBC used to be the Hollywood of Britain. The streamers have exploited that. They've come here, made a lot of programmes, it's run dry, and they've inflated the cost of everything. So, you know, somebody has to think up of the new long-running series that will go into television. You know, where are the Morses? Why not go back into the past? Why not, you know, why not have remakes of old programmes? Some of them are very, very good. You know, think of that, but you know, don't just whinge because you're not getting a series of 6. Think big.
And you're right. I mean, the quality of acting on some of these BBC and other British made productions is phenomenal, and I think, my personal opinion, a cut above Netflix, something like the SAS drama or Wolf Hall. The attention to detail, the quality of acting, absolutely phenomenal and of great cultural interest to the UK. But isn't the problem that because of these big multinational streaming companies, they've pushed up the prices of show production because they just want to create so much content that now the BBC and others can't afford to make it? But what's the solution to that? How do we get more money in the system? I don't mean taxpayers' money, because that won't be popular, but how do we get more money into British terrestrial TV?
The solution is to finance the PSBs properly. You know, you give the BBC a decent licence fee or some form of licence fee after 28 so they can afford dramas. The solution might be actually to take some money away from drama and give it to factual programmes. I mean, we haven't talked about the fact that documentaries are not being made because there's no money for them. Maybe there's too much spent on drama. Maybe it needs to be more spent on documentaries and other programmes like that. The solution is not to tax people who have streaming accounts, because that's just silly. That's one a bonkers idea that came around last week. You know, the streamers will do very well, but you know, they're not all doing very well. I mean, how many accounts do the 2 of you have between you from streamers?
I actually had to buy my own because I've been sponging off my parents for some time.
You've been logging in as them.
I decided a year or 2 ago that actually I'm pretty much.
You're old enough to have your own.
I'm grown up enough to pay for my own Netflix. But isn't this the point, right? Netflix produces some brilliant British TV that goes worldwide. Whether it's Baby Reindeer, which was a phenomenon, not just here but in the United States. I mean, Bridgerton, all of these Netflix series that hire British actors and actresses that use British talent for set design and costume and all the rest of it. And they're ploughing lots and lots of money, hundreds of millions of pounds into this country. Why does it all have to come from the BBC?
Well, no, I mean, the Brits need to be a bit bolder and dip their toes more into co-productions with Netflix, with Disney. I mean, the latest Doctor Who, that was a co-production with Disney, wasn't it? That had serious money in it. So, you know, stop being so sniffy and actually get into bed with some of these people and take their money. I mean, let me give you an example of the Open University. The BBC Open University used to have huge amounts of money to make programmes of men with beards looking at the camera, you might remember. Somebody in the BBC realised that all this money was there, and they started making a series about museums, art, and things like using the Open University money. So, you know, don't be too pure. Just look for the money where you can. And also, BBC Studios, which is the commercial arm of the BBC, is, in my humble view, not as good as it should be. They should be cashing it in terms of selling BBC rights and selling co-production rights. And as far as I can see, they're not doing much of that.
Well, thank you very much, John Mayer, former BBC producer and editor. Thanks for joining us. What's your favourite TV series ever?
Oh, that's such a big question. Favourite ever?
I think mine is Band of Brothers, which BBC and HBO collaboration, absolutely phenomenal.
I think there's different answers to different.
Yeah.
I mean, there's sort of
I didn't give you long enough to think about
it. The thing is, I'm probably just going to say something I've seen recently.
Yeah.
I did grow up religiously watching Monty Python. I mean, that was my entire childhood. I mean, and it was brilliant because I mean, the really early days of YouTube, like 2007, 2008, it was all on there, so it was all accessible, all free. Yeah, those days are gone. Those days are long gone.
Well, I'm sure you're in search of some winter sun because it is freezing here. So here's the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Morning. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A pretty chilly one out there today. A much duller day for many of us compared to the sunshine we had yesterday, and a pretty noticeable and brisk breeze blowing across the south. Now, that is also throwing in some showers, and it's cold enough for those showers to have a wintry flavour about them. A little bit of sleet here and there, some snow possible over the hills. The Chilterns, for example, may see a few flakes, but generally, for most of us, just cold.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Well, do stay with us here on Good Afternoon Britain. Up next, brevity is the soul of wit, according to Shakespeare. But one university seemed to miss that quote. They've put trigger warnings all over his work. Or is it all much ado about nothing, or is this a serious thing? We should consider that next.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now, after moving to the UK from Kochi in Japan over 25 years ago, our next guest missed the taste of home and started making sushi with local ingredients.
Yes, Tomono Davies went on to establish Tomono Sushi Party, inspired by her mother's dedication to cooking fresh meals every day.
Now, while sushi is usually enjoyed in restaurants in Japan, Tomono is showing that anyone can create it at home. So here we go. She's already taught over 500 people and is now bringing her passion to even more people.
So she joins us now in the studio to give us one of her sushi masterclasses. First of all, we're a little bit nervous. We're certainly not pros. I love eating sushi, but certainly not making it.
As long as you follow my instruction, it should be that easy.
Okay, great. That's what we like to hear.
So tell us a little bit about your business and why we're here today.
Of course. So my name is Tomono Davies. I'm originally from the place called Kochi, as you mentioned, and I'm the founder and the owner of Tomono Sushi Party. So we bring authentic hands-on sushi making classes to homes, offices in London and home counties. Also, we run public classes, the information which you can find on my website. Yep. So this goes all the way back in 90s, actually, when I was a student.
Never.
The Japanese food wasn't widely available, but I really craved a beautiful, aromatic aged sushi, Japanese food. And when you're craving something, you started making your own at home. And I fell in love with the Englishman. He brought me back to UK. Then that's the time more people start asking me, can you teach me how to make sushi?
The People's Channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation.
No,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 10 to 2, and the University of the West of England has been ridiculed by slapping 200 trigger warnings on Shakespeare plays.
Well, these include warning students that The Winter's Tale contains reference to puppetry and pregnancy, whilst a 2016 stage adaptation of The Tempest has been flagged because it features popping of balloons.
Goodness me. Well, let's discuss this now with the legal officer at the Free Speech Union, Stephen O'Grady. Stephen, university, I'm at a loss for words here. University, surely, is the place to encounter lots of ideas. And frankly, how on earth do you get to university? Presumably you have to have some A-levels first. How on earth can you be a university student without realising that some of Shakespeare involves, I don't know, daggers, storms, suicide, all of these things?
Yes, it is. It's preposterous. And, you know, we were just hearing now about the threats to production of British TV. And one wonders, these are drama students who are studying this. And if they can't sit through a Shakespeare play without being upset, well, you'd never be able to make a production like Wolf Hall or Bridgerton or anything like that, because you'd never find anybody to star in it. You know, anything slightly racy, little hint of violence, something like that, and they'd simply refuse to participate. It's quite ridiculous. And one of the things that puzzles me as well is what the point of this is. The students receive a trigger warning, you know, saying that, well, this features balloons popping, I believe, was among the list of things that the University of the West of England has chosen to flag up.
Scary.
And then what do they do? Are they allowed to leave the classroom because of the balloons popping? Do they get an exemption from having to write an essay on that particular topic and get waved through the module? I still struggle to understand exactly what the end state is here that they're going for.
There is a serious issue behind this quite hilarious story, which is that culture's changed now, and that people think that if they do find something alarming or triggering, which is true, you know, people experience different things in life, they're frightened of different things, then the answer to avoid it, whereas previous generations would have said the answer is to confront it.
Yes, absolutely. And I think this really is where it comes to relate to free speech, because there is this increasing culture that if people feel a little bit off-put by something, and it could be due to a bad experience in the past, it could be due to a profoundly held belief that they hold, it could be that it contradicts basic political opinions of theirs, but there seems to be a prevailing view that they can therefore exclude that from their environment somehow, and that they can therefore mandate that other people must take appropriate steps so as to maintain this cushioned environment around them, and that in turn leads to restrictions on what other people are able to say. And one wonders as well with this sort of thing, you know, it's also been in the news quite recently, the effect of people, young people in particular, who have never entered the world of work, in particular because of mental health difficulties.
Yeah.
And if that lack of robustness doesn't get fostered by this sort of cushioning.
Well, Stephen O'Grady of the Free Speech Union, thanks so much for joining us and talking through this bizarre story. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Do stay with us because there's an emergency cabinet meeting. What are they discussing? That's next.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Heading towards the weekend, it's still going to remain fairly cloudy, some showers, maybe even some hill snow, and still remaining chilly, particularly in those brisk winds. And it's all because of an area of high pressure over Scandinavia. That's bringing in a very brisk easterly wind, really adding on to the wind chill over the weekend. And same for overnight too, where we've got showers, longer spells of rain in from the southeast, spreading towards the Midlands and parts of Wales, perhaps bringing some snow to hilly areas across Wales, perhaps parts of the Pennines during the early hours of the morning too. But clearer to the far northwest, likely seeing some frosty conditions here by the time we reach Saturday morning. So to start across the south, fairly cloudy, and it could be quite damp at times too, with some patchy rain and drizzle across parts of the southeast. We might just see a few clearer spells across parts of Cornwall, but even here we can't rule out a few showers. Likely seeing some snow across the hills and Wales, parts of the Pennines, but clearer across the far northwest of Ireland, western parts of Scotland, so a brighter but chilly start here. And also starting to see a fair few showers feed into the northeast of Scotland too, where once again they're likely to be a little bit wintry across high ground. To start off the weekend, once again, there's still going to be plenty of cloud around. The best of the brightness once again to the northwest of Ireland, northwest of Scotland too. But for many, it's going to be a cloudy start to the weekend. Outbreaks of rain and drizzle at times, and still winteriness across the hills of Wales too. And still quite a keen easterly breeze as well. So even though temperatures around 7 to 8 Celsius by the afternoon, it's probably going to be feeling much chillier than that, even in the sunshine that eventually breaks through across the southeast. And it remains fairly similar into the evening too, still fairly cloudy, the odd clear spell where it's likely to turn chillier and we could see some frost. And that cloud sticks around as we head into the new week too, perhaps seeing a little bit more in the way of brightness as we head into Tuesday. Bye-bye.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're giving you not one, but 2 chances to win this month, with 2 prize bundles that include an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash. But that's not all. You'll also get a brand new iPhone 16 and a £500 shopping voucher to spend at your favourite store. So why not be extra lucky this month? For a chance to win an iPhone, vouchers and £10,000 in cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
In
the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Friday, the 7th of February. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Miriam Cates.
Crisis meetings for the Prime Minister and his cabinet in an unusual and extended summit in an undisclosed location. This as the Reform Party tops 2 nationwide polls and the Bank of England halves its growth rate forecast.
And of course, this is bad news for Chancellor Rachel Reeves, who's reportedly been put on notice following the bleak assessment from the bank, with stagnant growth and higher inflation recalling the grim economic days of the 1970s.
Elsewhere, a massive seat-by-seat mega poll shows the Tories and Reform could win enough seats between them to hold a majority at the next election. But would Nigel Farage cut a deal with Kemi?
And Donald Trump has turned his fire towards the International Criminal Court, which last year issued a controversial arrest warrant for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Trump is set to swipe the international body with sweeping sanctions.
I can't help but feel a little bit sorry for the Chancellor. I mean, the state of the economy, every forecast, it's just bleak. And to be fair, it does seem that the cabinet is divided. You've got, on the one hand, Rachel Reeves saying, please, can we just build some runways?
Yeah.
And on the other hand, Ed Miliband is on resignation watch because of that. I mean, they don't... They're united for now on the course of Heathrow, but my goodness me, is there going to be a battle over every single pro-growth decision?
Yeah, and the other problem they've is that much of their voting base comes from the public sector. So they're pouring money into the public sector. We've seen huge growth of jobs in the public sector, but it's actually the private sector that's needed for growth. But now you've got tax rates so high that wealthy people are either deciding to leave or that it's not worth taking that risk. It's not worth creating that innovation or just selling their company to Americans and going elsewhere.
I mean, I have to say, the number of people who have just moved abroad, and it's not just, you know, non-domiciled, super rich people. It's sort of regular folk. I mean, and perhaps worse than regular folk. I mean, people who are not super rich, but just rich. I mean, millionaires. We've had the biggest exodus of millionaires of any country other than China.
That's it. And we keep saying, you know, taxes are at a record high, but they're actually only at a record high for high earners. Middle and low earners
they're low.
They're lower proportionally tax paying than they were 10 or 15 years ago. And you might say, well, that's good, that's fair, but the people who create the wealth are now not incentivised to carry on doing it, and that's a problem for everybody.
And one of the really strange things is that we've had so many rises in the minimum wage that the sort of S-curve of wages has been getting flatter and flatter and flatter at the bottom end. It used, and I think there's a psychological thing here, because it used to be that if you were a teacher or a policeman or a nurse, you would be solidly middle class. Whereas now, you're likely to not actually be that far away from people on minimum wage. The minimum wage has gone up, your wage hasn't really gone up, and meanwhile the people on the top are living in a completely different universe. And I wonder, actually, have these minimum wage rises, number one, pushed up the cost of goods and services? So they've inflated, everything that people on middle incomes would normally do. So now people on middle incomes can't go to the same restaurants that they used to go to. And in the meantime, people who are in those traditional sort of middle-class jobs feel like they've got about the same amount of spare cash as people on minimum wage.
And it means that jobs that are less attractive, perhaps like care work jobs, now pay less than an Amazon warehouse, which is altogether less emotionally taxing, isn't it? So we've lost those differentials. I completely agree. It is a big problem. And things like service in shops, there are not as many people on the shop floor now. Maybe that's feeding into the shoplifting crisis.
Yes.
Lots of problems with it.
Well, we want your views too. gbnews.com/your say, as always, the way to get in touch. But all of that's to come after your news headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
Hello there, very good afternoon to you. Our top stories. It's been confirmed Grenfell Tower will be taken down, with the process likely to take 2 years. The government says it will carry out the works carefully and sensitively, with no changes to be made before the 8th anniversary of the disaster in June. Bereaved families and survivors are understood to have been told by the Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner on Wednesday. However, Grenfell United has accused Ms Rayner, the Housing Secretary, of ignoring their voices. 72 people died in the fire in June 2017. A man who shook his partner's toddler to death has been jailed for life with a minimum term of 25 years. Christopher Stockton was in sole charge of 22-month-old Charlie Roberts when the boy suffered a fatal head injury in the Darlington family home. His mother, Paula Roberts, left her son in Stockton's care to attend an eye test. Within minutes of leaving, Stockton called 999 to report the toddler had gone floppy. Roberts, who admitted to neglecting the boy prior to the murder, has been jailed for 4 years. Well, the Cabinet have been holding an emergency meeting to discuss challenging economic forecasts and plummeting ratings in the polls. Downing Street says Sir Keir Starmer chaired the meeting, and it was to tackle Labour's plan for change, investment, reform and growth. Well, it comes after a fresh blow to the Chancellor's ambitions to stimulate economic growth yesterday, when the Bank of England halved its forecast for the year. The bank cut interest rates to 4.5% in a bid to stimulate the economy, describing growth as weak and productivity as tepid. It means most households will come under rising financial pressure. Deputy Lib Dem leader Daisy Cooper says Rachel Reeves should rethink some of her policies.
The government is absolutely right to say that growth is its #1 priority, but the government's measures simply don't stack up. And the announcements just yesterday and the warnings that growth is going to be much lower than previously forecasted should be a real wake-up call for the Chancellor. We have said that she should cancel the jobs tax, which the government is planning to bring into effect in April. And we do think as well there's a very strong case for the government to renegotiate the botched Brexit deal that we have with the EU to try and get rid of the red tape that is holding back British businesses from doing all the trade that they could be doing right now.
The Liverpool-Manchester railway line set to be closed for much of the day after a car crashed onto the tracks at Salford. The vehicle came to rest upside down and surrounded by debris. Greater Manchester Police say the driver has been arrested on suspicion of drink driving and taken to hospital with injuries that are not thought to be life-threatening. Celebrity chef Gino D'Acampos denied allegations of inappropriate behaviour on the sets of his TV programmes. 2 people have died after a small plane crashed into vehicles on a busy road in the Brazilian city of Sao Paulo. Footage taken from a helicopter shortly after the crash shows a bus on fire at around 7:20 a.m. local time. That's when it happened. The 2 victims were found in the fuselage of the aircraft, which was bound for the city of Porto Alegre in the south of the country. Those are the latest headlines from GB News. I'll be back with more at 2:30.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back to Good Afternoon Britain. It's 8 minutes past 2 and the government is refusing to release details on the Prime Minister's ongoing secret cabinet meeting, with many calling it a crisis meeting with his inner circle.
Yes, there have been reports that claim that the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, is on notice after her plans for growth have been dealt a major blow. Another poor forecast from the Bank of England, halving growth prospects for this year.
Well, we're joined now by GB News political editor Christopher Hope, who is inside our Westminster studio. Chris, nice to see you. Do you think this rumour that Rachel Reeves' job is on the line is true?
Hi, Tom. Hi, Miriam. No, I don't think it is true. We've been told by the PM that she's safe in that role after I asked yes or no whether she would be there for the next by the next election. We are told that she will be there until the next election. So I think Rachel Reeves is safe. It doesn't mean there's not concerns about her approach. We've got the Bank of England halving growth forecast for this year to 0.75% yesterday. Better news, of course, on interest rates, but the issue of growth, economic growth, putting more money in all our pockets, that's what's worrying. And of course, these big tax increases, a cost on business, a double whammy coming up in April with the increase in national insurance costs for employers, plus the increase welcomed by some but still costly for business in the minimum wage. So there are concerns. I've been speaking to Jo White. She's the chair of the Red Wall Caucus, Labour chair of the Red Wall Caucus of MPs, around 40 of them who represent Red Wall seats, many of them facing pressure from Reform UK. And she raised a point to me in the podcast that we put out, Chopper's Political Podcast, that she thinks the focus of the Rachel Reeves' statements last week about growth were too much based in the south, and they want a Red Wall cabinet minister. Here's a flavour of what she had to say.
But so do you want to have a voice in the cabinet?
Oh my God!
Not you personally, just a Red Wall.
Well, Red Wall voice.
I have to support you in the cabinet.
No.
A Red Wall voice, a more of a northern voice. I mean,
yes, I do. I most definitely do. If and when there's a reshuffle, yes, I'd be loudly cheering for a strong voice from.
But the budget I felt was quite southern focused. Or the announcements, from Rachel Reeves last week, Oxbridge rail line.
She went for the low hanging fruit.
Yeah, but she didn't really. I think the north was a bit ignored. I think.
I agree.
You're nodding. Yeah,
I agree. And there was a level of anger from my Red Wall colleagues, and my challenge to Rachel is do that speech again. In the north, telling our story, because by telling a story, you're actually attracting inward investment and you're attracting new businesses. So come to the north, please, Rachel. You are Leeds MP.
Correct.
Tell our story, and we have a good one, and where we want to invest and where we want to get the new skills, and I'll be clapping loudly from the sidelines.
So concerns there from the Labour backbenchers about what the choices made by the Treasury. More concern to do with this MRP poll, a mega poll of nearly 6,000 adults revealed today on GB News, with PLMR and electoral calculus doing the work. Unbelievably, a three-way tie were an election held tomorrow. The Tories on 178 seats, Labour 174, and guess what? Reform UK 175 seats. So it would look like Nigel Farage would have the balance of power. A breakdown of the seats show Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, losing to the Tory party locally. Yvette Cooper, Home Secretary, Angela Rayner, the Deputy Leader, of course, of the party, and Jonathan Reynolds, the Business Secretary, they would all lose out to Reform. So concerns, I think, about why the party isn't doing more to tackle the threat of Reform. We saw, I think, this week in PM, you'll see a map there of the areas to be affected were an election tomorrow. Look at those colours there of blue and that sort of turquoise colour which Reform UK have. Now, a Labour source tells GB News this hour the government is getting on with delivering its plan for change. They've been clear from the outset, they say, that means tough decisions to address 14 years of Tory chaos and decline. And they say, while the opposition fight amongst themselves, the Labour government is putting in the hard yards to deliver much-needed growth, create more jobs, make people better off, and putting more money in our pockets, rebuild Britain and get the NHS back on its feet. So that's what the Labour government say. But there are concerns. And again, that meeting of Sir Keir Starmer with his top team, there's been a 2-hour cabinet meeting of the political team, 10 till 12. And right now he's meeting in a secret location away from the gaze of the press, although some of us know where it is, but we're not reporting on where it is. That meeting goes on till 12 till 4. We are not going to be given a readout officially about what happens in that meeting. And that was also, I think, highly unusual, although Darren should say it happened with a previous extended meeting.
That mammoth meeting still ongoing. Christopher Hope, live from Westminster. Thanks very much for joining us. Well, in the studio is Dr. Lawrence Newport from the campaign group Looking for Growth. Because, Lawrence, this is the #1 priority of this government.
Yes.
And yet the Bank of England has just delivered the most dismal assessment.
Yes. I mean, this is it is terrifying and extremely concerning. In fact, I set up with Jo Reeve Looking for Growth after the budget, just 1 or 2 days after the budget, because the hopes were high for a new government and for what they were going to be able to achieve. And the budget simply did not look to me something that was actually going to bring growth. And we launched Looking for Growth just with an event stating we are going to put something together, and we were inundated with people because there is a real appetite across the country for growth and to end decline.
So just a quick supplementary to that. When you launched Looking for Growth, your campaign group, a lot of tech people turned up.
Yeah.
And Mr. Dominic Cummings was there too. Is he part of your campaign?
No, he's very supportive. I was actually him and Mark Warner gave a talk at our first event, which is obviously extremely good to get real kind of people who are inside government be able to tell us exactly what's going wrong, exactly what's happening, and also, of course, to get a view on really how the country is falling apart in terms of its systems, in terms of really with growth. It is, of course, planning and all of the blockers that keep hitting us. As we've seen, it takes 10 years to build a footbridge over a railway. This is completely and utterly ridiculous. No serious country operates in this way. So, yes, support from them, very fantastic. And, in fact, many others who are coming forward, many people who are owning companies who, as you say, are in tech or startups, they're offering us constantly statements of, I can't get anything done, there are so many barriers in the way, and as I believe you were saying earlier, if things don't get sorted, I'm going to leave.
Now, people are comparing the situation to the stagflation in the 1970s. Now, inflation is nowhere near as bad as it was in the 1970s, but on the other hand, we're a lot more indebted. So, of course, the interest rates and things like that have more effect. Of course, Thatcher famously came in and eventually, after stabilising the economy, did cut taxes. People are calling for that today. What are the big barriers, apart from the political ones, stopping Rachel Reeves from cutting taxes?
I think there is a ream of issues with the economy which are obviously incredibly deep, and there are different kind of theories on how to go about this. We have, Looking for Growth, a very particular view, which we believe is borne out, as you say, in the 80s and otherwise, although actually there are, of course, now many more technological solutions than there ever were before. We are in a very different world from the 80s. We are in a world in which, really, with growth, and if we are able to focus efforts, if we are able to decrease all of the issues in our systems, where, for instance, we've got much more artificial intelligence, we've got much more systems that we can actually install and make things easier, faster, cheaper. We should be able to build things quicker, should be able to get
You're
jobs.
sounding a lot like Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves at this point.
Yeah.
Because Keir Starmer did this big speech on artificial intelligence, how it's going to fix everything. And also, Rachel Reeves has announced this expedited infrastructure, more nuclear power plants. I mean, is she saying the right things? And frankly, is it turning into the right policy? Will this turn around?
I think this is a really, really good question, because we have been pushing very strongly for deregulation of planning around nuclear power plants, because energy is the big bottleneck. The government are making the right statements over the last 2-3 weeks. They have committed to things that are not as far as we would like and not, we don't think, enough to address the issues, but getting in the right direction. The problem is, the devil is all in the details. We don't yet know the details, and the baseline rate of all of this kind of stuff is, unfortunately, things will take forever. Like, for instance, the third runway taking until 2035, and that being seen as a very ambitious plan. This cannot be how you run a country, and it is not how we ran the country in the Industrial Revolution when we made, really, the modern world.
Well, Lawrence, thank you so much. No quick fixes, unfortunately, although, of course, if you've got any ideas, write in gbnews.com/your say.
Well, now we're going to give you 2 chances to win. Yes, not 1, but 2 chances in our latest Great British Giveaway. As... beg my pardon. As 2 amazing prize bundles can be won. Each bundle contains a brand new iPhone, 500 quid to spend in your favourite shop, and £10,000 in tax-free cash.
Fancy your chances to be one of the 2 winners? Well, here are all the details you need.
The Great British Giveaway is officially 1 year old, and we have a birthday treat for you. We're giving you not 1, but 2 chances to win this month, with 2 prize bundles that include an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash. But that's not all. You'll also get a brand new iPhone 16 and a £500 shopping voucher to spend at your favourite store. So why not be extra lucky this month? For a chance to win an iPhone, vouchers and £10,000 in cash, text cash to 63232. 1 entry code cost £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Do stay with us. There's plenty more to discuss, including one migrant, how he was allowed to stay in the UK despite preying on little girls when his wife wouldn't have intimate relations with him. It's a horrific story, and that's next.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
I'm really pleased to see this story. It's the news that bowel cancer screening, the age for that is going to be dropped from 60 to 50. And this is really, really important because bowel cancer is one of the biggest killers, and more people appear to be getting diagnosed with bowel cancer in their 50s. Not entirely clear why. And there was an inspirational woman called Deborah James who I actually met when I used to be the Shadow Health Secretary, and I remember meeting her when she had her cancer diagnosis and supporting her campaign, and she sadly passed away a couple of years ago, but it was a phenomenal campaign, and I think did inspire the nation. And this is so important. So people in their 50s are going to be sent these kits in the post. And I suppose my plea is just do not ignore these kits because you can deal with cancer if you catch it early enough.
Yeah.
So
I mean, this is not the most pleasant thing to do, and a lot of us aren't used to it and talking about it and whatever, but it is essential, obviously, to do.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And the other reason I wanted to sort of flag this is, I mean, we can sometimes make ourselves sort of pretty miserable looking at the newspapers, but this is undoubtedly a good initiative that the government have done this, and that campaigners have persuaded the government to do this. So, look, I just want to plea to everybody watching, if you get one of these kits, use it.
And, of course, I think it's really important within that to point out that this would not have helped Deborah, because Deborah was 40 when she died. And what's really important when you see stories like this is to pay attention to what your body is telling you. And if you have symptoms that are weird, it is important to go to your doctor and to talk about them and to take the tests.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Now, just to give you a small content warning before this next story, as some viewers may find aspects of it disturbing, there's widespread outrage as a UK judge has blocked the deportation of a convicted paedophile because his family in Pakistan might disapprove of his crimes.
This is a shocking story. Now, despite grooming barely pubescent girls, that's a quote, the offender won his appeal on human rights grounds, and now the Home Office is fighting back, calling the ruling plainly wrong.
Well, joining us now not joining us yet, but yeah, I mean, this is just a horrendous story. I understand that he came over on a spousal visa in 2019, committed these crimes during the pandemic when his wife was in hospital, blaming her absence for his sexual needs. And then he was supposed to be deported. He served time, supposed to be deported in June 2023, appealed and won the appeal in June 2024.
And this appeal is all on the basis of the fact that he might be discriminated against in Pakistan.
His home country.
But I mean... Why
That's
is
a consequence to your crime,
Why
surely.
is that a concern?
Yeah.
Why are we so intent of protecting the livelihood and, frankly, the respectability, I suppose, of a convicted paedophile?
Well, this is the horrendous kind of overblownness of the ECHR, that the original aim was to stop people being tortured by their own states, and you can understand that in the aftermath of the Second World War and everything that had happened in Germany and everything like that. But actually now we're using it to protect convicted criminals from going back to their home countries where they might face consequences for their crime.
And the extraordinary thing here is that when people defend the ECHR, they always say, but you have your rights to freedom of speech thanks to the ECHR. Where was the ECHR when a man was arrested in Manchester last week for burning a Quran? Now, you may agree or disagree with the fact of burning a Quran. I think it's a crass thing to do. But my goodness me, is it not a speech act?
Yeah.
If it's your own property and you should be able to do what you want with your property, and a man got arrested, where was the ECHR in defending his right to do what he wanted with his own property without harming anyone
Well,
else?
the truth is he may win an appeal on ECHR grounds, but it doesn't stop you getting arrested in the first place.
You'd
That's
think
the
if we had
problem.
a strong rights culture, if we had a Bill of Rights akin to that of the United States, would the police have dared?
No, exactly.
Would the police have dared arrest a man for burning a book?
No, but this is the complete kind of spaghetti nature of our human rights law, that on the one hand, people like Maya Forstater won her case for free speech on the basis of ECHR. There's quite strong protections for religious freedom in the ECHR. But on the other hand, it protects convicted paedophiles from being deported to their home countries. And the other grounds that he's won on is the fact that he has 2 daughters here. And so apparently he has a right not to be separated from them, which, you know, you can understand from a family point of view. But the point is crime has to have consequences.
But also, I can't understand. I really can't understand this. If the right to a family life means the right to a paedophile accessing his own children...
Which he has to be supervised for because he's on the sex offenders register for life.
Right. Why is that a protected right? Yeah. Why on earth do we have a charter that protects the right of someone to access children after they've been convicted for accessing children?
Then the one way we have got to get criminals out of the country who are not British is to deport them back to their home country. We've got a problem enough with criminals in our own country who, for very obvious reason, are our problem, and we have to deal with them. But when somebody comes from abroad, why on earth can they not be sent back to their country? But the thing is, the Home Office, for all its faults, is trying to deport these people. The problem is the judges, who love a bit of international law, are refusing because they're finding all sorts of reasons not to deport people.
I've had some discussions around areas like this before, and particularly with Pakistan. One of the reasons, not in this case, but in some of the other cases, as to why people can't be deported if they were going to be in prison in Pakistan, is that British courts don't think the Pakistani prisons are run well enough or are well constructed enough. So the answer was, from the British government, to fund Pakistani prisons. Not only trying to deport Pakistani heritage abusers in this country to Pakistan, but also paying for the prison construction for the prisons that they'll be kept in that other country. I mean,
with British taxpayer money.
Yeah.
There is a consequence to crime. I mean, that surely is the answer here. And if you are a foreign national, you commit a crime, then surely you must understand that could mean you could be deported.
Well, as we say, the Home Office is going to fight this one. A spokesman from the Foreign Office said foreign nationals who commit crime should be in no doubt that we will do everything to make sure they are not free on Britain's streets, including removal from the UK at the earliest possible opportunity.
We remain resolute in our commitment to ensuring there are no barriers to deport foreign criminals, as it is in the public interest for these people to be removed swiftly. That's what they say. Doesn't happen though, does it?
Shall we try and get away from this story now? I mean, let's search for some winter sun instead, perhaps. Here's the forecast for some of those top European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
A wet start to this weekend in Mallorca, but the rain should be clearing from the Balearics by Sunday. Plenty of showers to come across Italy. Lots of fine and sunny weather over the Greek islands. A bit of a chilly breeze, though, blowing here across Turkey and Cyprus. Some wet weather, as I said, across Italy and the south of France, looking pretty soggy. That rain clearing away from the Balearics. Plenty of sunshine across the Canaries. That should last through the weekend into the early part of next week. Sunny on Sunday in Barcelona.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. And up next, do you find the term farmer's wife sexist?
Well, that's the verdict of the NFU in Scotland. But do actual farmers agree with them? We'll speak to one next.
Very good afternoon. Just exactly 2:30. Our top stories. It's being confirmed. Grenfell Tower will be taken down, with the process likely to take 2 years. The government says it will carry out the works carefully and sensitively, with no changes to be made before the 8th anniversary of the disaster in June. Bereaved families and survivors are understood to have been informed by the Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner on Wednesday. However, the Grenfell United group has accused Ms Rayner, the Housing Secretary, of ignoring their voices. 72 people died in the fire in June 2017. A man who shook his partner's toddler to death has been jailed for life with a minimum term of 25 years. Christopher Stockton, who was in sole charge of 22-month-old Charlie Roberts when the boy suffered a fatal head injury in their home in Darlington. His mother, Paula Roberts, left her son in Stockton's care to attend an eye test. Within minutes of leaving, Stockton called 999 to report the toddler had gone floppy. Roberts, who admitted to neglecting the boy prior to the murder, has been jailed for 4 years. The Liverpool to Manchester railway line is likely to be closed for most of the day after a car crashed onto the tracks at Salford. The vehicle came to rest upside down and, well, several metres off the road, surrounded by debris on the tracks in Salford. Major disruption, of course, to trains throughout the day. Greater Manchester Police say the driver of the car has been arrested on suspicion of drink driving, but his injuries are not life-threatening. President Trump has signed an executive order imposing sanctions on the International Criminal Court. He's accused the ICC of illegitimate and baseless actions against the US and Israel. Neither country recognises the court. The measures place financial and visa restrictions on individuals and their families who assist ICC investigations of American citizens or allies. Last November, the ICC issued an arrest warrant for the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu over alleged war crimes in Gaza, which Israel denies. It also issued a warrant for Hamas commander Mohammed Deif, who was reportedly killed by an Israeli airstrike in July. And a cold snap's on the way. Temperatures could plummet as low as -7 over the coming days. A yellow cold weather warning is already in force now across much of the country. The Met Office is warning of the coldest temperatures in Scotland. It could also, though, drop to -4 in the north of England and Wales. And snow could fall, perhaps a couple of centimetres. It means an increased use of healthcare services by vulnerable people and a greater risk, but a return of the dreaded beast from the east is unlikely. Those are the latest headlines. More news in a little bit, in about half an hour's time.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. After all the sunshine yesterday, it's going to be a cloudier day ahead, turning rather showery across parts of the south too, and a cold feeling day, particularly in the brisk winds. And why the cold spell? Well, it's all because of high pressure largely dominating across Scandinavia, bringing in a very brisk easterly wind across the country, really adding on to the wind chill across today. And as you can see, plenty of cloud around and rather damp at times across parts of the south and southeast. Some showers moving flowing through here, perhaps turning a little bit wintry across any high ground too. Largely dry to the north of this, and we'll even start to see some sunshine across the northwest of Scotland, perhaps the northwest of Northern Ireland too. And temperatures as it stands around 5 to 6 Celsius as a high for today, but as I say, feeling rather chilly in those brisk winds. To end the day across the south, plenty of showers, these merging into longer spells of rain at times across parts of the south and southeast, falling as snow to higher levels, particularly across parts of Wales. Largely dry across Northern Ireland, northern parts of England and parts of Scotland too. Plenty of cloud, particularly in the east, but some clearer spells just to the northwest of Scotland. That's where it's going to turn particularly chilly overnight, perhaps even seeing some frosty conditions by the time we reach Saturday morning. But this area of rain continuing to push its way into central areas as we head into the overnight period. Once again, likely seeing some snow, particularly across high ground in Wales. Southern parts of the Peak District too could also see some snow, particularly by the time we reach Saturday morning. But across the far southeast, largely falling as rain and still remaining fairly dry to the far northwest of the country too. Colder here though, but with all the cloud, most towns and cities elsewhere remaining above zero. To start off with the weekend, once again, there's going to be plenty of cloud around. The best of the brightness once again to the northwest of the country, where we'll likely see plenty of sunshine. But on the whole, another chilly day ahead and still with a risk of those wintry showers. Bye-bye.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Alan Wright. In West Yorkshire, the M62 eastbound is partly blocked after a breakdown between Chain Bar at junction 26 and junction 27 for Gilderson and the M621. In South Yorkshire, the M18 southbound is partly blocked after a collision at the entry slip from Bramley and the A631 at junction 1. In Essex, delays on the M25 anti-clockwise, that's queuing after a 4-vehicle collision near junction 26 for Waltham Abbey. And in Surrey, the M25 is partly blocked clockwise after a collision. It's happened just before junction 6, that's the turn-off for Godstone and the A22.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Welcome back. It's 2:36 p.m. and the National Farmers Union in Scotland has sown the seeds of a new gender equality debate by urging farmers not to use the expression farmer's wife.
Yes, a diversity and inclusion report issued by the union claims the phrase reinforces gender stereotypes, as the farmer could just as easily be a woman. Hang on, I found a problem with this immediately. Well, a farmer could be a woman, yes, and the woman could have a wife. How about that? Have I outwoked
or
the
could
NFU
be
Scotland?
the wife herself. Oh, yeah,
Exactly.
There you go. Very
there
good.
we go.
So you should write to them. Well, to discuss this further, we're joined in the studio by an actual farmer, Tess Weldon. Tess, thank you so much. You've travelled down from North Yorkshire. I think you said it was snowing today. What's your assessment of the NFU's latest instructions to farmers?
It's patently insane, and it just shows how the NFU's captured by interests that actually don't care about farmers or farming at all. And they're more interested in making sure that they tick boxes.
Yeah.
I mean, this is all in a diversity and inclusion report. Why does a farming union need a diversity and inclusion report in the first place? I suppose lines like this would simply become inevitable from the moment it was commissioned.
That is the million-dollar question. Apart from, presumably, it didn't cost quite that much to have a 30-page report made by somebody that used to work at the NFU and has now gone off and clearly taken a cushy job in an office somewhere.
Yeah.
Some of the suggestions say, you shouldn't talk about how much acreage you have as a conversation starter, or ask somebody else how much acreage they have, because they might feel embarrassed or excluded. It's almost like they don't understand what farming is. You farm land. Knowing how much acreage someone has is a relevant point to how much experience they have, what the size of their business is, and what kind of knowledge they're imparting. What do they want us to talk about? Not shopping. You can't say, oh, bring your wife to Glasgow, the shopping's great, even though that's encouraging people to bring their spouses to the NFU conference, and actually they can speak about things like how difficult it is being a farmer's spouse, how much work you have to do, and share knowledge and build community. Can't say that. Can't say farmer's wife, even though farmers' wives have actually been the people that keep the farms together. They're the people that, or farmers' husbands if the farmer's a woman. I don't think farmers' husbands are going to be offended that we use the term farmer's wife. Traditionally, the person supporting farmers have been their wives, and traditionally farmers have been men. I'm a woman, I'm a farmer. I don't really care. It doesn't bother me.
No. And it seems to be an attempt to divide farmers. And you said earlier on in the break that actually this is a time when farmers need to be most united. I think one of the strangest statements that the NFU made in this report is that they kind of criticised farming, saying it's a traditional sector where change has been viewed with caution. But surely all change should be viewed with caution.
Change should be viewed with caution when it's change for no reason. Yeah. And I see no reason why we need to be spending money on having these reports made and, bashing farmers over the head for the language that they use. When it's not offensive, there's no slurs in there. It's just the language that people use in everyday life. And actually, there are far better ways to encourage people to get into farming and feel included. You could have grants for farmers to actually run tours for maybe inner city kids to see where their food comes from. You could have apprenticeships for people that don't traditionally come from a farming background. You could have grants from the government to people looking to get into farming that don't have their own land. Yeah. These are all ways that you could be spending money and actually making a difference. However, it's a lot easier for places like the NFU to just, we're just going to do a report, look at this is wonderful, send it out, without thinking about any of the impact. And again, what is the NFU doing for farmers?
I am very surprised. To be honest, I can't really see a justification for a document like a 60-page document like this being produced at any time. But even less a time when farmers are under pressure like they have never been before in this country. I mean, it seems like we report every week on this show about a new regulation, imposition, tax placed upon the farming community in the UK. And the NFU in Scotland is focusing on what words and language farmers should be using, rather than banding farmers together and trying to row back the government on some of these really quite pernicious anti-farming policies.
Maybe we ask the NFU Scotland what is a woman, should keep them busy for a good 6 months, let farmers get on with the real work.
But if farmers don't know the difference between male and female, I mean...
We're going to have problems,
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it is this DEI madness, isn't it? This focus on narrow differences between people rather than what's the common cause. But this seems to be, sadly, the way that a lot of unions have gone. They've become very Whitehall-focused, very focused on the DEI agenda, and actually divorced from the original trade or sector that they were trying to support. Do you think that's the same happened with the NFU?
Absolutely, and their justification, part of it, is exactly that point. They say, well, by putting these guidelines in place, we can make sure that businesses aren't open to lawsuits. I think a far better thing would be to actually lobby and say these laws that are being imposed, saying that you have to say this, this and this, otherwise you're suddenly sexist, racist, and a whole load of other phobias, are insane. And they're not relevant, they don't help people's lives, they don't actually help beat discrimination. And actually putting the focus into challenging what's wrong rather than just kowtowing and deciding to kind of bow to the left's agenda.
Yeah, so support the farmers rather than...
Exactly.
But while we talk about language, we're distracted from the fact that 10% of all farms in the UK are going to be turned over to the net zero means, and that family farms, for the first time, are going to face inheritance tax under this government. I mean, how is your farm responding to these huge impositions that the government's placing on you?
All farmers are just doing the best that they can, and unfortunately that's not really enough without government support. Last year, half of farms that went on the open market were sold to non-farmers.
God.
So
we're losing farms?
We're losing farms at a rate that we haven't been for years. God. And a lot of farm businesses are actually turning away from producing food and starting to do Airbnbs and experiences and things, because that's what pays the money. People farm because it's a lifestyle. They farm for the love of it. They farm to keep the British countryside intact, have those beautiful hills and dales that people walk over, that people take their holidays to. The things that Britain's had for generations that defines us as a country in the eyes of the world.
Yeah.
That's why farmers farm. And unless we're given some support by the government, unless we're given some support by our union, please, then we won't be able to continue to do that.
Yeah, very, very sad prospect. Well, thank you, Tess, for all you do. And thank you for coming all the way down from North Yorkshire. I think you said it's snowing today. Really appreciate it. And hopefully the NFU are listening.
Yes, fingers crossed. Well, do stay with us here on Good Afternoon Britain, because we're going to bring you what the NFU Scotland has indeed said itself. Yes, defending the diversity and inclusion strategy, NFU Scotland's chief executive said the following.
Publishing its report in full and committing to its recommendations sends a strong and positive signal that NFU Scotland is serious about diversity and inclusion across the organisation.
They added, we believe that by demonstrating leadership, reforming our operational structures, enhancing training and improving our operational practices, we can create an even more inclusive environment for all our members to get involved and flourish.
I wonder what Donald Trump would say about that.
Goodness me. You just brought a flashback to, I think it was Golden Globes award ceremony where Donald Trump sang the theme song to Green Acres, holding a pitchfork with a straw hat.
That's what we need.
Clearly, he's someone who, I think he was dungarees as well, dressed as an American farmer. I just can't get the image out of my mind now. Oh well. Well, next we're going to head up to the Royals. What have they been up to? Yes, the royal family heads to Rome. That's coming up soon. What exactly will they be discussing? That's next.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
It's the body image thing that concerns me. It's young girls watching Love Island and really skinny girls and young boys
hit the gym after this. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, they're seeing perfect bodies on the screen.
You don't need to go in the gym, Amy. You look gorgeous as you are, love.
I know. You see, the reason I don't enter anything like that, Kerry, is you know
you're going to win.
Exactly. And it's not fair. It's not fair, I think, on everybody else being there.
It's not fair.
No.
But Kerry, what do you think about the body image thing? You know, when you talk about your daughter, is that something that you'd worry about, her comparing herself to the likes of what she sees on the screen?
Now, this is where there's a conflict of interest for me because I've been brought up in this industry since I was 17, so it's massively affected me. I mean, when you're put on the front cover of magazines after having a baby with a stretch mark in the circle of shame, you know, it does do a psychological effect on you. I think a lot of celebrities who have been around for so many years as I have been affected by that. But everyone has to bear in mind, I've had my children. I'm in my 40s. I feel I'm entitled to have my tweaks and try and improve on what I think are going down south and health and safety, tripping over any things that I don't want to be tripping over anymore. But I definitely do believe, I mean, majority of the young girls that go on Love Island, they all have the same big lips, the same big eyelashes, all the butt implants, and the belly in the 20s. You know, it's if you go to the airport now, I remember going to the airport and I looked around and all the girls looked exactly the same.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 48 minutes past 2. Now, the King and Queen will host actor Stanley Tucci at a formal dinner event in Highgrove in celebration of slow food and slow fashion.
Well, the actor's trip to the palace comes ahead of the royal state visit to Italy in early April this year, where they will join Pope Francis in celebrating the 2025 Jubilee year and will carry out engagements in Rome and Ravenna.
A king, a queen and a pope walk into the Vatican.
What happens?
Finish the joke. Well, joining us now is our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker. Cameron, a busy agenda for the royal family.
Yeah, busy agenda. 2 separate state visits, one to the Vatican to meet the Pope. As you say, it's his Jubilee year, actually, because they have 25 years, a special celebration, getting closer to God. And then the second one is to Italy, of course, and that is about the Foreign Office and the British government trying to shore up the relationship between Britain and a European neighbour. Italy, I'm told, for those of you who are worried Britain's going away from the US and Trump to Europe, that there is a state visit on the table for the United States, but nothing has been confirmed, no dates have been set. I suspect it's very much in the planning stages, and we're not sure if it's going to be outward or inward, or indeed which royal's going to be taking part in it. So there you go, that's what we know about that one. But yes, we've got this dinner going on this evening at Highgrove in celebration of the Italian state visit, which is happening in April, coinciding with their 20th anniversary. And you may be asking, what is slow food? What is slow fashion? Well, in 1986, bit of history for you, in Italy, a massive hoo-ha erupted because residents were outraged that the McDonald's was going to be put in one of the sacred squares of Rome. They protested and wanted it all to be about slow food. So that's about traditional Italian cuisine, traditional family recipes, taking your time over the flavours, using traditional ingredients. And that's what the theme is going to be of tonight's dinner. A lot of it grown in the Highgrove Gardens, actually, as well.
Do we know what the king likes to eat? Do we know... I mean, is he a... we know Donald Trump loves fast food, loves a McDonald's burger. Yes. King Charles, is he more of a slow or a fast food person?
Well, I know he hates spicy food. So curry isn't particularly his favourite. In terms of what he's going to be eating this evening, if you tune into GB News Breakfast tomorrow morning, I can give you the exact menu, but I can't give it to you yet.
Oh, so in case someone tries to poison it.
And the wine as well, more importantly. What kind of wine are they going to be drinking? Very it's all these important questions we bring to you here.
So Charles is visiting the Vatican.
Yes.
Later on. Has he been to the Vatican before when he was Prince of Wales?
He has. So he and Queen Camilla, when they were Prince of Wales, Duchess of Cornwall, about 15 years ago, visited the Vatican. Of course, the British royal family have had a little bit of a love-hate relationship, haven't they, with the Pope, of course.
It's been fairly quiet recently.
It has been fairly quiet recently.
But this is an interfaith meeting, because the king isn't just the king of the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth realms, he's also the supreme governor of the Church of England.
Yes.
Does the Pope recognise that? I mean, this could be a bit of a... I mean, I'm sure popes have met monarchs before, but a bit of tension there.
Well, famously, Queen Elizabeth II visited a Pope as well and met a Pope. Yes, I mean, obviously, it all stems back from Henry VIII, who's King Charles III's ancestor, wanting to marry Anne Boleyn, his second wife, and the only way he could do that was by renouncing the Catholic Church and divorcing his first wife, Catherine of Aragon, which obviously upsets the Pope. He declared himself... Exactly. He declared himself supreme governor, as you said, Tom, of the Church of England. Nowadays, in the 21st century, I think the relationships... Well, it's a bit friendlier, let's say, the relationships here, but the king places a huge importance on interfaith harmony. So Catholic, Protestant, Judaism, Islam, all of them. So he really likes communities working together, so I'm sure that will be a theme.
When he was Prince of Wales, he was sort of suggesting he might be not Defender of the Faith, as is the traditional title of the monarch, but Defender of the Faiths.
Yes.
That sort of seems to have fallen by the wayside.
Well, you saw it in the coronation, Tom. If you remember when he was leaving Westminster Abbey in 2023, at the Great Western Door, there were the leaders of the United Kingdom of each faith in the United Kingdom to greet His Majesty, who had just been crowned and was wearing, I can't remember which crown he was wearing, the imperial state crown, all of the different faith leaders. So although it was a Protestant service, he did nod to the other religions in the UK.
And is it still the case that anybody in line for the throne can't be a Catholic? Because certainly that was the case for some time after Elizabeth I.
I'm not sure, to be honest. I don't think you can. I don't think you can.
Because the accession oath is, I will defend the one true Protestant faith.
And I think even Princess Anne's son, Peter, didn't he marry a Catholic and she had to convert, I think?
Quite possibly.
Like that,
But Peter Phillips was never given a prince title, so he didn't have to relinquish any of his princely titles. But yeah, quite possibly. There's lots of these little laws which just haven't quite been updated as of yet.
It's a long time since the
I just can't see how a king could possibly be anything other than Protestant unless you strip the role of the Supreme Governor of the Church of England from the Crown.
The monarch has to be a Protestant because it is Supreme Governor of the Church of England.
But also relevant this year will be the appointment of a new Archbishop of Canterbury, which is actually the Prime Minister's role. And I think since Gordon Brown, that's been a fairly hands-off role because he, as a Presbyterian, didn't feel able to appoint the Church of England. And of course, since then we've had a Hindu Prime Minister. We've now got
We've had a Catholic Prime Minister in Boris Johnson.
Yeah,
right.
Forgot that one.
He's
a devout man.
Yeah, very. And now we've got an atheist Prime Minister.
Exactly. So do you think? Does the King play any role in choosing the Archbishop?
So he will perhaps give what we call formal sign-off. Okay. In terms of the actual decision, that's up to government and
Well,
the church.
Cameron Walker, thank you very much for being with us, and indeed, thank you at home for watching too. We'll be back from Monday at 12. Well, I will be with Emily, but don't go anywhere. Martin's next.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Heading towards the weekend, it's still going to remain fairly cloudy, some showers, maybe even some hill snow, and still remaining chilly, particularly in those brisk winds. And it's all because of an area of high pressure over Scandinavia. That's bringing in a very brisk easterly wind, really adding on to the wind chill over the weekend. And same for overnight too, where we've got showers, longer spells of rain in from the southeast, spreading towards the Midlands and parts of Wales, perhaps bringing some snow to hilly areas across Wales, perhaps parts of the Pennines during the early hours of the morning too. But clearer to the far northwest, likely seeing some frosty conditions here by the time we reach Saturday morning. So to start across the south, fairly cloudy, and it could be quite damp at times too, with some patchy rain and drizzle across parts of the southeast. We might just see a few clearer spells across parts of Cornwall, but even here we can't rule out a few showers. Likely seeing some snow across the hills and Wales, parts of the Pennines, but clearer across the far northwest of Ireland, western parts of Scotland, so a brighter but chilly start here. And also starting to see a fair few showers feed into the northeast of Scotland too, where once again they're likely to be a little bit wintry across high ground. To start off the weekend, once again, there's still going to be plenty of cloud around. The best of the brightness once again to the northwest of Ireland, northwest of Scotland too. But for many, it's going to be a cloudy start to the weekend. Outbreaks of rain and drizzle at times, and still winteriness across the hills of Wales too. And still quite a keen easterly breeze as well. So even though temperatures around 7 to 8 Celsius by the afternoon, it's probably going to be feeling much chillier than that, even in the sunshine that eventually breaks through across